Northeast tonight we've got our good friend Neil Geddes-Ward. And he's going to do the Apollo detectives. So now we'll know whether they did go to the moon walk when Neil.
Hope so. We'll find out one or the other.
Yeah. Turn your phones off, we'll have a good night.
Okay.
I'll leave it to you.
Thank you.
We're having a break at half time.
Yeah, half time, whenever that may be. I'm not even sure where that is.
Give me a shout.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
You can all hear me? I can see a few. Nope. No. Yeah. No.
That's all right.
Oh, too dark, I think.
It's too dark. No, you'll have to suffer. Back on.
Yeah.
You can trim it a bit.
No, just leave it.
That's it. Okay.
Put your sunglasses on.
The video is more important than your comfort of stuff.
All right, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your patience. I arrived here just about an hour ago, actually. So it took me 8 hours to get up here. Normally it would have taken 4 hours, but accidents on the motorways and things like that. So just about made it in time. So slight delay getting everything connected up and everything working, but I think we got there in the end. So I'm going to be talking about something called the Apollo detectives, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Has anyone seen me talk before?
Yeah. Yes.
Quite a few of you. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go on. Well, anyway, it's nice. First of all, it's nice to be back at Truth Seekers Northeast. It's nice to be back in Newcastle, that area, and it's for me personally, it's good to be back in men's clothing. But that's another story. One of 5 boys. One of 5 boys. I'm in the middle. All my brothers are artists, but I'm the only one that's ever taken it up like this, doing it kind of professionally and stuff. But we're all artistic. As I say, I'm the only one in the middle. And the other thing that separates me from them and everybody else is that I'm the only person ever in the world to get a full refund from Odour Eaters, but that's another story again. So you can chew on that, not literally, but think about that one. So first of all, we'll take a hand. Who thinks we went to the moon with men, Apollo astronauts things? No one? Oh, well, I might as well go home then. You're convinced? Yeah, that's a good point.
I know the Apollo stories.
I believe more in Blake 7 and Star Trek than the Apollo missions, actually. Actually, when I was little, I remember I shared a bedroom with my brothers, my 2 oldest brothers, and I remember my dad coming up at some point in the middle of the night, and it was 1969, and I was very titchy then, and he goes, "Boys, man's landed on the moon." And we went, "Yeah, okay." Just went back to sleep. And I thought, well, Captain Kirk lands on all these planets all the time. What's the big deal, you know? But anyway, so the background to this, the Apollo detectives, is that me and a group of other people, Ben Emlyn Jones being one, I'm sure you know Ben, and a few other researchers around the world as well as the UK, we talk online a couple of times a year and we record it. And we call it the Apollo detectives because we talk about whether man went to the moon, and everyone shares their research. So I'm going to show you bits of my research, a little bit of research from other people in the group, and also research from other people that are not in our little group that we've come across, which we think you might find interesting. So it's a bit of background to us, and I'll fire off with the title sequence, and you can actually watch our episodes on my YouTube channel, which I can tell you about later on. Oh, hang on, go back a second. There we go. This is how it goes off on YouTube anyway. This is the title sequence. Marcus Allen, Scott Henderson. Marcus Allen's from the UK. Scott Henderson there is from Canada. He's a very, very good researcher. I've seen some more names coming up. Andy Chaplin. He's a co-host of mine on the Paranormal Peep Show. Ben Emlyn Jones, you know, he hosts our programme, and there's me, Neil Geddes-Ward. I think there's a few others that take part. We'll see them in a minute. So that's roughly how it looks to people that get on the internet. So I'll get to the next bit. So this is Neil Armstrong talking in the 1990s. You'll see him in a minute. This is him stepping on the moon, allegedly.
One giant leap for mankind. That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we've only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Now, that's a bit of a... People have wondered whether he's talking about something hidden there. You know, what is truth's protective layers? Is it something that he knows and maybe suggesting that we'll peel away those protective layers of truth as the years go past? I don't know. But he alludes to that. That was in 1997, I think, when he was talking to NASA. Was it 1999? I don't know. But he was talking to the young students that presumably now are working at NASA. And NASA are now working on a new project called Artemis, where they're supposedly going back to the moon. It's only taken them about 25 years so far. And supposedly in the 1960s, with 1960s technology with slide rules and no calculators and things like that, they did it in 9 years. So, yeah, work it out. Okay, so this is the Apollo Detectives. There's me there. There's Marcus Allen. That's Scott Henderson. There's Ben. This is Bart Sibrel. He's from the United States. He's taken part in one of our shows and he's made some really good films called Astronauts Gone Wild. You can find that on YouTube. And also A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, again on YouTube. He's also got a very good website called Conspiracy Corner News. So you can look at a lot of this stuff's been taken off of YouTube, like everybody else's that talks about conspiracies or anything COVID related. So he's got a website now called Conspiracy Corner News. It's worth checking that out. This gentleman here, Jarrah White, he is from Australia. He's got a big channel himself called moonfaker.com. And he's on YouTube. That's my colleague and friend Andy Chaplin there. And that's another friend of ours, Colin Sulgren, I think we pronounce his surname, and he's a kind of science type guy. But we've also got other people that have come on board since, because I did this talk a couple of years ago in High Wycombe. So one of the first people that was involved in the Apollo exposure, you know, did we go or didn't, was a chap called Bill Casing. That's him there in the right-hand corner. Now, he actually was worked for a company called Rocketdyne. They actually produced the rockets for the Apollo missions. Although he wasn't a technical guy, he was a guy that worked in their publications department. So, for instance, if one engineer or scientist wrote to another engineer and they wanted their work all tidied up and edited to look smart, he would be the guy that would do all the tidying up like an editor would do. And he would publish it, and so that when they had their stack of papers, it was easily readable. Because these people would write, but they weren't maybe really good and clear at writing. So to make it all coherent and correct English, Bill Casing was the guy that tidied it all up. And so he got to read a lot of this technical information, and he said that he saw information going backwards and forwards saying the chance of us getting to the moon is something like only 10% of making it there and back successfully. We haven't got a hope in hell basically of getting there. This is what these engineers were suggesting to each other. This is back in about 1962 or 63. So he kind of thought about this and wondered about it and thought, that's really weird, you know. Here we are, years later, they've supposedly gone to the moon, and yet they were saying they couldn't do it when I worked at Rocketdyne. So he decided to look into it later on, and he actually wrote a book. It was self-published. In fact, he printed it himself and photocopied it and sold it. And it was called We Never Went to the Moon, a very original title there, We Never Went to the Moon. And it sold reasonably well, but it became more well-known with the advent of the internet in the early 2000s. People started to rediscover it, and then it was republished. And he started to appear online in interviews and things like that. He's now passed away, but he was like, some people call him like the grandfather of the Apollo hoax theory. But there is another guy in the United States, because he's from the United States as well, another guy in the United States called Ralph Rennie, who was a self-taught engineer. And he had an IQ of Mensa kind of quality, so he's a pretty intelligent sort of guy. This is a website that's been recreated by Jarrah White, one of our people on the Apollo Detectives, as a kind of tribute website, because Ralph Rennie committed suicide because he was in such pain from his illnesses that he just couldn't put up with it any longer, so he actually took his own life, sadly. But he was one of the pioneers of the Apollo hoax theory as well, and He looked at all kind of ideas and wondered if they could do it. He actually made little vacuum boxes to test out whether they could maneuver their hands in gloves, in spacesuits and things like that. So he was quite a clever guy from that point of view. So all the people that look into Apollo now kind of take their nod from these two pioneers of that theory. So there we are. That's how we kind of look on the internet. If you ever go to my website, Neil Peel, that's some of us anyway. The more people we add, the bigger the picture gets. So there's Marcus Allen, there's whoever that guy is. There's Jarrah White, and there's Ben. Ben hosts it, as I say, and then when one of us else talks, someone else pops into the screen. We have a, maybe a 2-hour discussion or more, and some of us present our research on the screen. And so, as I say, you can go on the internet and look at that on YouTube. So these are Apollo facts written by a guy, not by me, talking about scientists, whether scientists of today believe in the Apollo missions or not. Now, this guy says, his words, not mine, he says, pro-Apollo nutters, that's what he calls people that believe in the Apollo missions, persistently state there are no scientists in the world who refute the Apollo moon landings. And this guy says that is complete and utter balderdash, which is to be expected of pro-Apollo nutters, or pans as he's put there. Because there are more scientists who support the hoax theory than those who refute it. To start off with, here is a list of scientists who support the landing as being genuine. Professor Michael Brandt Shermer, he's a skeptic of the paranormal, by the way, but he'll believe in the Apollo missions, interestingly enough. He's American. Professor Stephen I, who's Dutch, I don't know what the surname would be of that guy. Professor Professor Brian Cox, we all know him, don't we? Professor Harold Leach, who's a German, a grand total of 4 people. This is from this guy's list. There may be more that do believe it, of course. Now, here is a list of scientists who support the moon landing as a hoax, okay? So Professor James N. McNanny, I think it is, who's American. Professor Luke Sargent, American. Professor Andre Balloch, British, doesn't sound British. Professor Colin Rourke, British. Professor Krasimir Ivan Jensky, who's Russian. Professor Takehiko, I can't even say this name, Japanese. Professor blah, 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 blah. Basically, he's coming out with all these names. He says, so the moon hoax supporters are way out in front on 69%, with moon landing supporters way behind on 31%. Now, that may not be totally accurate, but this is what this guy has done as a kind of quick bit of research, okay? And I just grabbed that because I thought it was interesting. Now, bit about the technology, okay? We started to develop the space rockets to go into space or the moon as a result of World War II. And it was Wernher von Braun, who was part of Operation Paperclip. Does anyone know what Operation? Yeah. You know about that? Where we brought the Nazis over to the United States, and the Russians had a handful as well as the weaponry. And that's what became the rockets of NASA eventually, and the Russian space missions as well. So after we were sort of strapping monkeys and chimpanzees onto V1 rockets, they started to put people in, and that became the Mercury rockets there. And eventually they progressed right up to the Apollo days of the Saturn V, 5B, in the fact that it had 5 boosters at the bottom there. And a man would be about that big in comparison to it. The Saturn V booster rocket would probably be as bigger than this house, I'd imagine, given the pictures that I've seen anyway. And the only thing that would come back was this tiny little section at the very top there, which is the capsule with 3 men in. And in this section here was what they call the Apollo lander, the lunar lander, which lands on the moon, the lunar module as it's commonly called. And so that part there and the part in there would be the 2 parts that went to the moon, and then the only part that came back was this small little cabin-sized capsule, which would probably fit in this room here, roughly, with 3 people.
Actually, it was in a museum in London.
Yeah, in the Science Museum, that's correct. It can be seen in the Science Museum. So this is the Mercury and the Gemini rockets. You can see the size of them, and really they were just one-man crewed rockets there in comparison to the Saturn V there. And there you can see the lunar module and the command module there, which is this one here. You can see the 3 astronauts there, and that's the lunar module there. And these are the Gemini capsules as well. So, now, in the early days of Apollo, they didn't really quite know what they were doing, as Bill Casey was saying, because the fact that their record was saying that we haven't got hope in hell getting there, and some of the mistakes they made, or were they mistakes, cost these gentlemen their lives. Now, if these guys hadn't died, the probability is that these would be the guys that would be coming down the ladder, and he would be saying one small step for man, okay? This is Gus Grissom, and he was the guy, the favourite. Everyone liked him out of all the astronauts that were chosen for the Apollo missions. And he was the favourite to actually go to the moon. Now, he was quite outspoken because he was sort of finding out a lot of things about the Apollo missions that weren't going right. He said that, you know, the whole thing is just not working. And he actually said the whole mission is a lemon. And he actually got a lemon from his lemon tree in his garden, hooked it onto a coat hanger and stuck it on the outside of the space capsule that he trained in. And he actually called a press conference to tell the press that this thing is not going to go anywhere. There's failures left, right and centre. And, you know, he was just calling it into question. Are we going to make it? Because John F. Kennedy said that we got to get to the moon within 10 years. And, of course, John F. Kennedy, by this point, had been assassinated. But America was still committed to getting these people or someone on the moon by 1969. So these were the favourites to go. But unfortunately, the Apollo 1 crew, Grissom, White and Chaffee, were killed on the launch pad in January 1967, 3 years before Neil Armstrong allegedly set on the moon. And the reason that they were killed was that they were in a capsule that was being tested with pure oxygen. Now, it doesn't take a scientist to know that if you get oxygen, I mean, what do we use oxygen and acetylene tanks for when we're doing stuff with it? That's dangerous stuff. It burns on pure oxygen. And there was a spark or something inside the capsule, and the whole capsule just ignited into flame. You can actually hear audio of them on the internet where they're saying that we're on fire. And prior to that, literally minutes beforehand, they were having communication problems between their capsule and mission control building, which is only like a block away, and he was saying, how are we going to get talk to each other from the moon if you can't even hear me from one building to the next, basically. So he was highlighting there that the technology wasn't working. And then moments later, the whole thing erupted into flame. And he'd already held his press conference by that time, so he'd called into question whether NASA would be able to make it or not. Now, some people wonder if that was a deliberate way of getting rid of him. Okay, and his son actually investigated it many years later. He used a Freedom of Information request or something like that to get access to go into the capsule that had been burned. And he found what he claimed to be some sort of plate that had been put around the back somewhere, which he suggests was something that caused a spark to ignite in that pure oxygen cabin to then set the whole fire going. And he wondered if it was a deliberate attempt. Unfortunately, these guys, they had to go with him. They weren't so outspoken, but they happened to be in the capsule at the same time. So they just said, okay, they're going to die with him, if that is the case. There it is there. That's the capsule, what was left of it after the Apollo 1 fire. And as a result of this, the whole mission, the whole program had to be halted for a year and a half. And they had to redesign the capsule to withstand this kind of thing. The doors were one of the things. They couldn't open the doors, for instance, so the doors were redesigned. And I don't think they put pure oxygen in their cabins anymore. They probably had a nitrogen mix, more of the air that we breathe at this kind of level anyway. Now, this is another guy that took a bit of a bust, this one. This is Thomas Barron, who's a safety inspector. He didn't actually work for NASA. He worked for one of the NASA contractors. And again, he highlighted safety issues and bad practices in the aviation industry that he was working with, that were contracted to work for NASA. And he said the whole thing's a shambles there. And he actually wrote a 500-page report highlighting all the problems and all the safety issues that needed to be sorted out. And he called a press conference. And, of course, the press got hold of it and they published it, blah, 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 blah. And then, would you believe, sadly, accidentally, the safety inspector guy got run over on a train track with his family a few weeks after he'd done that press conference. Yeah. Complete coincidence, of course. So this is it in the paper. Reported his death April 1967, in the same year that Gus Grissom had died, 6 days after his testimony. There it is. His family, his wife and his adopted daughter died as the car went over the train track and the train smashed straight into it. I mean,
What day in April was that?
not sure. April the 18th, it says there, so it might have been a few days before that, maybe 17th, 16th, something like that, maybe. Not April the 1st, though.
The Feast of War.
So, after they killed off half of their crew, they decided to pick these guys to go to the moon, which is Neil Armstrong, who we saw at the beginning, giving his speech. This is Mike Collins. He's the guy that would stay in orbit around the moon in the command module. And that's Buzz Aldrin. And everyone's heard of Buzz Lightyear. And, so he's the guy that went down on the moon, allegedly went down on the moon with Neil Armstrong. Now, the interesting thing about Buzz Aldrin is that Armstrong had lost his young daughter, unfortunately, to a brain tumour a number of years earlier. That's unrelated to any kind of conspiracy theory. That's just what sadly happened to him. So he had obviously a burden to bear on that aspect alone. But a year prior to going to the moon, Buzz Aldrin's mother committed suicide. And the official reason given was that she wouldn't be able to handle the fame or cope with it of her son being on the moon. She just wouldn't be able to cope with it. Now, maybe that was the case, but it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Why would you commit suicide knowing your son is going to go and land on the moon? Wouldn't you be immensely proud of him? Maybe he had said something to his mum. Maybe it sort of said, we're not really going to go, or something like that. I don't know. And maybe she had to be silenced as well. But there seems to be an awful lot of deaths associated with the Apollo missions. Unlucky people, aren't they? And yet, luckily, they all managed to make it to the moon, apart from Apollo 13. I think you're safer up in space than on the ground, to be honest. So, belt up for the ride, I've put there. So, this is a very condensed version of how they planned to get to the moon. They took off there in Florida and fired their little engines, and they went up round there a couple of times, and then they fired their rockets again, called translunar injection. And that's the bit where they say you're ready to go to the moon, and they fired off, and that's the bit that takes them to the moon. Now here, the moon is just over there. It's like a couple of orange or apple spaces away, but it's not really. If this was the Earth and the moon was to scale, the moon would be down the end of the road. Well, according to this scale, it's about 240,000 miles away, so it's a long, long way away. It's the furthest any man has ever travelled, okay? Now, what they didn't really talk about in the 1960s, and they didn't even mention it on translunar injection when they had to go through it, was going through the Van Allen radiation belts. I'm sure you've heard of those, haven't you? It's not the band with Eddie Van Allen, who died. He's not the one that died. But this is this belt, and I'll perhaps I'll talk about it here. The Van Allen radiation belts. This was discovered by James Van Allen, I think his name was, in 1957, using a couple of rockets and balloons and things. He sent up Geiger counters up into space on rockets, basically. And the higher they went, the Geiger counter was picking up a load of radiation. And then it would stop and die down. And then it'd go up a bit more. And then it'd pick up more radiation. And they worked out after a number of tests that there's actually two belts of radiation, intense radiation. And the best way to explain what that radiation is doing here, if you think back to school when we had these little magnets and iron filings, the bar magnets, well, the Earth is a bit like a big magnet. It's got a magnetic field. So you've got the North Pole and the South Pole. And obviously when you had your piece of paper with the iron filings, you put the magnet underneath it, it'd make all these weird, strange patterns. Well, that was trapping those little iron filings in the magnetic field of the magnet. Okay, so what's happening here, as the sun blasts out its radiation and its solar flares on a daily basis towards Earth, our magnetic field is almost like a spacesuit, if you like, to protect the people of the Earth with its atmosphere and this magnetic field. It actually stops that hitting it. And the field literally acts like deflector shields, like in Star Trek, you know, the Enterprise has deflector shields. It's like our own natural deflector shields. But what happens, a lot of the radiation from the sun gets trapped in these belts and has become the Van Allen radiation belt. Now, normally there's two belts, but occasionally they've detected three. Now, they start from anything up to 1,000 miles upwards from the Earth, and then they go right up to about 20 to 30,000 miles out, approximately. They kind of contract and expand. They vary. There's even something called the South Atlantic anomaly, which I will be talking a lot about tomorrow, which is where the field is slightly weak. And over Brazil, there's a part where the radiation leaks down over Brazil, and it's only about 200 miles above Brazil. So they're obviously getting nice suntans over there in Brazil because of this anomaly. So basically, one of the arguments put forward by people that think the whole thing is a hoax is that how did they get through these Van Allen radiation belts? And NASA says, well, it's easy. Some people say they went through the North Pole. They sort of launched, flew around, then turned north with it, steer the wheel, as it were. Mm-hmm. Or they just went through it at top speed, 26,000 miles per hour, and they spent about an hour in the Van Allen radiation belts. And they said it's as much as having a chest X-ray, they're saying. So that's what we got to believe. And yet, in the 1990s, now remember, they sent like 12 men to the moon and back, so they could do all their checks of, the effects of radiation on them, and they supposedly had these little meters that read how much radiation they were picking up. The shuttle went up in the 1990s, and one of the things they took up on the shuttle was a human skull. And they put it in a cupboard inside the shuttle. No one had to look at it, and they just attached little things to it to check how much radiation was penetrating this skull, because they still didn't really know at that point how much radiation people were picking up. Now, the shuttle only goes up about 300 miles, so therefore it wasn't even up in the Van Allen radiation belts, and yet still you will pick up radiation at that lower level. I mean, the fact that if I sit next to you, you'll pick up radiation from me and vice versa. We all give off radiation to a certain extent, but it's a safe level. The TV, the computer, they all give off radiation. But the higher you go, the more radiation you're exposed to. So pilots that fly frequently are also exposed to radiation, but not as much as Apollo astronauts. But they also say that their ships were radiation proof. Now, I've got questions about that because, like, when you land on the moon and then you get out of your ship and supposedly protected against radiation, you're opening your door. You've got the cosmic radiation of the moon coming straight through the door, haven't you? It's a bit like letting the north wind in, but a different kind of north wind, But they don't seem to think about that one. So here we go again. You can see that's where the International Space Station would be. It's literally about 200 miles above the Earth. You've got GPS satellites that helps you track your car when you're traveling and, tells you where you are and things like that. There's the Outer Van Allen Belt, 12,000 to 25,000 miles. Geocentric orbit satellites for NASA. These would be observatories, solar observatories, and also satellites for Sky TV, that type of thing. Now, they can operate if they're shielded enough through radiation, but apparently if you get a big solar storm, and I think they've been talking about one happening like soon or lately, it can knock these satellites out because the electronics is just like a massive surge. Like when you plug in, if you plug something in, you get an electrical storm, you get a surge come through, it can knock out your electrics, and you sometimes have a surge plug to stop you. The electronics on these craft are kind of protected in a similar kind of way. They're protected from this radiation surge or solar storms to a certain extent. But that's more modern technology. In the 60s, I doubt very much they had it as efficient today. Okay, this is clips from Astronauts Gone Wild by Bart Sibrel. This is where he approaches Apollo astronauts and says, "Did you really go on the moon?"
You're the one who...
He gets punched by Buzz Aldrin.
When you didn't. Call him a kettle black if you ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
You want me to knock you in the head?
Well, I want you to swear to God on the Bible that you walked on the moon.
Okay.
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
So why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Sibrel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get...
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
And get the hell out of the black house.
It's okay. Well, take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
The shadows in the wrong place. I don't give a damn about all that shit.
You're full of shit.
Of lunar orbit being falsified.
Being falsified?
Correct. We got an unedited tape from a source at the Johnson Space Center.
Totally nonsense.
Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt. And if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem.
Yeah, right here's fine. I'm Bart with ABC Digital.
How you doing?
I was given a classified tape from the Apollo program. It's 31 years old. It's an unedited reel, including outtakes from the mission. It's got about 20 takes of a single shot of the mission.
What mission?
Apollo 11.
Yes.
And the photography is being forged in the mission. They're faking a shot of being halfway to the moon. And they refer to you on the tape as a shot that was done during Apollo 10, where you put a transparency over the window and move the camera of the Earth and move the camera back away from the window, turned off the lights in the spacecraft, and appeared to be halfway to the moon when in fact they were in Earth orbit.
Huh, really?
Yeah, and they said it was the same way that you did it on Apollo 10. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to put your left hand on the Bible, to raise your right hand, to swear to God.
Stick it in your ear.
Well, you were giving you an opportunity to swear to God under oath that you walked on the moon.
I don't do that kind of thing.
Well, if you really walked on the moon, what's the problem of swearing to God that you did? Do you believe in God?
You want me to knock you in the head?
Well, I want you to swear to God on the Bible that you walked on the moon.
Okay?
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
Why run away? If you've been in the moon, swear on the Bible. Yeah, I think, is there more coming up? Maybe that's the next clip.
Why didn't they just say they'd signed the Official Secrets Act? They weren't allowed to say anything.
Well,
I mean, that's the obvious
they
way.
could say they've been on the moon because publicly they've been on the moon.
Directional seal have waxed by the CIA.
That's right, he says that in that clip. So the next clip is an interview with Bart Sibrel from the same programme with Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin thinks he's there talking about a book that he's written. But of course, Buzz Aldrin is cornering him, and saying, not Buzz Aldrin, Bart Sibrel is cornering him, and he wants to show him a tape, which is what he was just talking about to John Young. And basically, the tape is them inside the Apollo 11 capsule. And what they've done is they've switched out all the lights inside the capsule so it appears to be blackness of space, right? And then where there's light coming through the window, presumably the Earth, because they're just above the Earth, like in Earth orbit, it's alleged that they've got like a transparency or a slide with an Earth kind of shape on it, and they're putting it over the window. So the light from the Earth shines through this and gives it a bit of a glow, and then they switch out all the lights. And then they're saying on camera to mission control or the audience that are listening that they've got the camera pushed right up to the window to look out, and they're saying they're something like 150,000 miles out, halfway to the moon, and so the Earth looks very tiny. But in fact, what they've done is just moved the camera to the back of the cabin, switched out all the lights so you don't get any controls showing, and you can see this tiny Earth there. But the problem is that someone leaves a strip light on accidentally and gets caught on the camera. So he shows this tape to Buzz Aldrin. and it makes buzzwatering pretty uncomfortable.
I think when you see the footage, you'll see that it's
Wow.
very extraordinary, one of a kind,
Okay.
behind the scenes type
Yeah.
of footage.
Yeah. Well, if it is, why do you have access to something that no one else has seen before?
Serendipity, I guess. And it was recorded on the 18th
Of what?
of July, 1969. Do you remember this?
The 18th?
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Sure. Okay, Roger. Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such a weekend when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we're seeing. Thank you very much. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light. We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the terminator or inside the shadow. We can see the oceans with a definite blue cast. See white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth. Roger, the ATC's working real well. The F-22 looks good, over. Hello, Apollo 11, Houston, did you copy, over? You copied, Charlie. Roger, your transmissions the last couple of times have been about 2 by, over. Okay, how do you read me now? Right, you're 5 by now. Coastline. Now we're coming in. Can't quite make out who that is.
What is your proposition? That we didn't go to the moon?
I know for a fact that you did.
Huh?
I know for a fact that you did not.
You know for a fact that we did not.
That's correct. And you'll see this tape proves that.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in satisfying your suppositions when there's all this evidence that we did.
This proves, as you see, that you were using the window to demonstrate that you were halfway to the moon when you were
Turn the
doing an
camera
illusion
off,
with
please.
the window.
Turn the camera off. You're full of shit.
It shows that you're in Earth orbit. Now, if the moon is 3 days away, and this is late on the 18th, how could you possibly walk on the moon 2 days later when this was shot on the 18th? Or
You want me to sit in front of a camera while you're taking pictures, you're showing this, and then you want to see my reaction?
I know for a fact that you
That's
didn't.
slimy journalism. Do you realize that?
If
You ought to be ashamed of
If you read the
yourself.
document that I have in here, you'll find that it's not. That this is a personal plea to do what is right.
Well, we sit and we talk about things ahead of
This is the
time.
document that you'll want to see. I know for a fact.
But
that
what it is you're trying to do is unethical. You don't believe that?
No, I do not.
Well, then we have a difference of opinion.
This is where you're using the window of the spacecraft to appear to be the Earth far away. We got the raw footage of it. We have an auxiliary track, so in prompting you when to speak.
You believe in UFOs?
No, I do
Believe
not.
we've been visited by? Well, why do
No, I
you want to
don't.
believe this stuff?
I know for a fact. We've had this analyzed, and this is the window, and and it's dated by an atomic clock at the Goldstone tracking station, which is on the tape.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why
You
don't
were
you
there.
talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. We're not.
I know for a fact that it did. And this tape would prove it in a court of law. It would.
Why don't you try? Why don't you put your money into a court of law and see how people laugh at you? You want it.
No one has
Is your
laughed.
camera working?
No one has laughed.
And this makes you the real famous person that has discovered this and reveals all this stuff. What an ego you must have to want to propel yourself like this.
That's not why I'm doing it, and God knows that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the truth to come out because I think it was wrong.
You can also notice how the astronauts
But you're doing it the wrong way. You don't mislead somebody like me to come in here.
If you didn't go to the moon, that's misleading people. I'm showing you this tape.
We went to the moon. We're not misleading anybody.
Then how is it possible that this is the window that's shot to make it look like?
Look, you can manufacture all you want with these things.
This isn't manufactured. And you know that it isn't.
that of an interior of the astronauts at work.
I believe this would prove it in a court of law that you did not go to the moon. It's dated on the 18th. It proves when you remove the
You give me your business card.
It's all in there. It's all in there.
Not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert.
This proves that it's the window. You can see them removing the crescent insert that you did to create the Terminator line in front of
You're
the
so
window.
full of shit, I can't believe it. If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
This is a close-up of the lunar module. This is right in there. You probably can't see. I didn't write this, but it just goes to show that this is all stuck together with bits of tape. There's bits of paper, they call it mylar, protective paper and tin foil, if you like. And it's all stuck on there with tape. I'll just show you this. We've got Hasselblad cameras. Now, this is something else. The Hasselblad cameras, it's alleged, could not perhaps work in a vacuum. Because remember, on the moon and in space, there's no air. And the thing is, they used film cameras in them days. They didn't use digital photography. Now, film cameras were made with plastic and gelatin from animals, and they've got tiny microscopic amounts of liquid in there, air and things like that. And they reckon that they would maybe crack or buckle or something like that under the temperature changes of being in space. And the film would jam in the thing, and also going through the radiation belts. When you, say, took your old cameras through X-rays and things, it could fog the film. And yet these films came back pretty much unblemished by that kind of stuff. But they had these cameras attached to rack-mounted things on their chests. And the idea is that they had a little handle and they could just press a button like that. And they couldn't see through their visors or hold it up to the thing. They just had to guess where they were taking the shots. And yet a lot of these shots are so brilliant, almost like taken by a professional photographer. I'm not saying every shot was brilliant, but there's ones that the composure is so well done, you're thinking these are untrained photographers doing this on the moon in extreme conditions, and yet it looks like great on the front of Times magazine or something. It looks too good. This is a shot of Buzz Aldrin descending the ladder. Photograph is taken by Neil Armstrong, so it's said. Now, the argument goes is that you shouldn't really see Buzz Aldrin at all because he's in the darkness of the shadow because the sun is on the other side of the lunar module. So you should not see him at all. They should all be black. But you'll see little highlights here of where there's light. And they didn't take any flashes. There's no camera flashes going to the moon. So, for instance, this here is where light is showing on the boot. And there's light hitting these areas. Look, it looks like a light hitting this ladder here. This should all be totally black. And as one of our guys says, he looks like he's lit up like a Christmas tree. He should be in complete blackness. Now, if you look at the shadow, look at that shadow, that's absolutely black. He should be as black as that. Now, the argument is said by the pro-Apollo believers that it's the light reflecting off Neil Armstrong's suit, which is casting the light there. And yet, you see other astronauts in other things, other shadows and things, and they're lit up just as well. It doesn't quite hold water for me, really. I'm talking of water, we're going to talk about that later on as we go through the talk. Some other impossible things. Now, the flag. There's always a controversy about people moving the flag, and NASA says, oh, it's because they've shaken the stick and things like that. Well, here's a picture here. On this one picture, this is Apollo 11, that's later on, and this is a shot taken from the camera that's placed inside the lunar module. The flag is placed this way, and then it's looking that way. You can tell even the shadow is slightly different. So who's moved the flag? And yet they said the flag was never touched, except when they took off The blast from the ship moved the flag or even knocked it over. And it's definitely the same. It's not from a different mission because you can see these rocks here, that they're all in those positions there. So definitely the flag has moved for some weird reason. And getting back to the ship itself, the lunar module, look at this. This is the grand United States Stars and Stripes to show everybody it's the Americans getting to the moon. You're proud of the fact, so you've got your Stars and Stripes. How do you put it on your spaceship? They've used sellotape. You should see it. Sellotape. United States flag on it. You know, come on, you spend billions of dollars and yet you're sticking it on with bloody sellotape from the local supermarket.
That's got to be a great advert for your sellotape.
Oh, absolutely. The sellotape. But the other thing is, how does sellotape work in a vacuum? Because it's sticky stuff, isn't it? I mean, would that crack or buckle or something? Now, going to get to this water stuff on the moon. This is Harrison Smith. He was the geologist that was on Apollo 17. And he was photographed by Gene Cernan, who was the other astronaut on that mission, the last mission to the moon. Again, look at the shot. Perfect composure. It's a perfect, almost triangular thing. The Earth is up there. The point of the this flag is looking at the Earth here, and you've got this astronaut there. It's a lovely shot, really good shot. It looks so nice, and someone signed it, and it's got the American emblem there. So let's just take a look at the flag. Now this is the flag in close-up. Now I appreciate that people at the back probably can't see it, and I'm happy to show this later on if you want to come up and look at it. But this flag here, which is this flag, is close up. You can actually see dark patches of blue around the stars, and that looks like a wet flag to me. Why is it a wet flag? You know, like you hang your t-shirt out on the line after it's come out tumble dry out of the washing machine, and it dries back? Well, it's evidence of like the damp drying back on this flag. So has it rained on the moon? I mean, what's going on here? You know, nice clean flag because they've just washed it. That should not happen. Why have you got moisture on a flag?
So if you believe John Lear, he says that there is actually moisture on the moon.
Well, see, I wonder if they put these stories out to support this fact.
It's quite outlandish.
Yeah.
Watch his 4-hour interview.
There's a larger version of it. You might see this dark patch, you see? And here is the colour it should be as it's dried out, but this is definitely the damp colour, you see. Now, moisture in a vacuum just goes and expands and boils away into nothing. So if you took that kind of thing and it was wet and stuck it on the moon, that would just disappear within seconds. And yet here it is, slowly drying back. These tiny molecules of water. That shouldn't be there. What is doing there? That was discovered by Scott Henderson, one of our contributors from Canada. Now, he's also this is Scott's work again. This is the lower section of the lunar module. So this is a section that lands on the moon. Now, in the later missions, 15, 16 and 17, they took the lunar buggy. You might remember this rover thing that they drove around on. Now, people said, where do they store that? Well, the idea is they stored it in this quadrant, okay? So on the first missions, they had this big round ball inside one of the quadrants, which is actually the helium tank, because they had to have helium that they mixed with other liquids as part of their propellant, allegedly, on the design. So suddenly, here's the ladder here, here's this big ball that they've got their tank of helium in this quadrant, this section. Now this is looking from above, that part there is the ladder, but later on when they come to taking their moon buggy, that's where they store it, in this quadrant. So where's the helium thing? They've moved it around the back. Hang on, how can you do that? And still, you're going to land this thing that's never landed on the moon before with a moon buggy, and you move the design around a bit, it's going to be pretty unstable to land. It just doesn't bear thinking about because you've never landed it and tested it. And yet here you are doing this mission with an additional thing, a lunar module buggy. And he also said, Scott said, he also thinks part of this rover broke off as they were going around on there. And it's been just left on the moon. He's actually found evidence of it. And he's also found spheres. I mean, they talk about golf on the moon. He's found spheres on the moon as well. And I'd actually, because Scott had spent ages, he spent something like 10,000 hours looking at all the lunar photographs, and he found loads of weird stuff which we're going to look at. He inspired me to go looking for stuff, and you'll see some of the results of the things that I've found on the moon. And you guys can do it as well. You know, you just go to Flickr, type in NASA Apollo on the Flickr website, and you can bring up all the pictures, spend a good evening or whatever looking through these things. You'll find all weird stuff on there. Okay, this is also what Scott's talked about. All these astronauts have these little maps or guidebooks, if you like, on their arms. So when they're walking around the moon, it's like a script. Turn the page, do this, dig that hole, pick up that rock or something like that. But it's almost as if like, pick up this rock there, pick up that rock there, and you're thinking, hang on, you're on the moon. How did you know that rock was going to be there? And yet this script was written a year beforehand. That was the weird thing. And then it's saying, go to this crater, go to that crater, and things like that. And then there's a guy's name, Jones. Who's Jones? Is it a director? Someone that's not on the mission? There's no astronaut called Jones. There's not a crater called Jones. Is it Jones the cat from Alien, maybe? Jones, he crops up in a lot of these little map booklets. And this is a cracker if you can see it. I can appreciate it might be hard, but this is the capsule of the Apollo missions, the one that comes back with the men inside it. This is it above the moon, flying, and what you should see here, because this is almost like reflective mirror-like silver, aluminium silver or something, where it's made from. You see on one side it reflects the moon, and typically in other shots you see it black because it's reflecting outer space. But when you zoom in on it, instead of reflecting outer space, Scott thinks that you can actually see a door here and another door, and I think in this part of the door, we've enlarged it, he thinks it's someone standing in the doorway. So is it a model? You won't find that on every single pitch like this, but this is what he's discovered. You should not see that door, you should not see that door, you should not see a person standing there. So is it a model in some way? And it's reflecting the special effects team in the studio. This is another one picked up by Scott. This is again looking through the window of the lunar module, and you perhaps can't see it there. I can see it here, but you can't really see it there. But you actually pick up a double shadow, and he's trying to work out why you pick up a double shadow. Is there two sets of lights, and it should only be one? So people say no, it's the pane of glass. There's double panes of glass. It creates like two impressions of shadows. But if that was the case, I would expect to be two impressions of shadows for these craters as well. And also the thing is, if you're creating two impressions of shadows, you're seeing two images, that doesn't sound pretty safe to me, especially if you've got to be looking out this window and you've got to judge distances and where you're going to land safely. And if you're getting a false image, a double image, it's not going to be exactly safe for landing with it. It's going to be blurred vision, I would have thought. Now, what we got here? Oh, yeah. Now, when they land on the moon, they got a rocket that's firing 10,000 pounds of thrust, and supposedly they can throttle back on the thrust so that it's not firing 10,000 pounds of thrust, but it's actually going down to about 3,000 pounds, so it's not so powerful. But he reckons, and again you can't see on the screen here, that this section here is damaged, and he reckons on a later mission, because it's damaged here with these arrows, there's a dent in it. He reckons that it's the same piece of kit, it's the same rocket engine. In other words, it's the same lunar module. They might have dressed it up slightly, but they've just had one lunar module, and they've dropped it from a height or something like that, and it's buckled this bell. They call it the engine bell, basically. And this is a piece of kit, God knows what it does, but they take it onto the moon like a trolley, like a supermarket trolley. And he reckons that if you look in there carefully, you can actually see through this thing. You can actually see the moon surface through it. So he reckons there's nothing of electronical interest with inside it. It's just a gizmo box that pretends to do something. It's like a prop, really. It does nothing at all, because you can see the moon soil behind it. So it's just an empty contraption. Now, this is controversial stuff, okay? So you're going to laugh at this, and I appreciate that you're going to laugh at this because it's weird. But he's found things like cars on the moon. It sounds like something out of the Daily Sport or Sunday Sport or whatever like that, bus found on the moon and that kind of stuff. But I don't think he reads that newspaper because he's from Canada. But this is a scene probably from Apollo 11, the first mission. There's little things out on the horizon. He's zoomed right in on them. So the arrows indicate what he's found here. He's enlarged it and he's thinking, well, that looks like a car to me. And he's put a car there for comparison. You can actually see, well, is that the wheel? Is that the front of it? Kind of a car shape. And I started looking and I found car shapes on the moon as well. Is it, this kind of thing, your mind playing tricks? Here's another one. This here, is that there? Could it be a car like this? This kind of all-style car. Now, someone saw this on the internet and they said, oh, but why would they be getting rid of classic cars? These classic cars. Why would they leave them on the moon? Or why would they put them on the set of the moon? And he said, well, at the time they weren't classic cars in the 1960s. They've only become classic cars like now today. They weren't regarded as classic cars in the 1960s. So what he reckons it is, it's not in Area 51, this moonset. He reckons it's in Flagstaff in Arizona. And basically, in the same way that, you know, when they land on a planet in Star Trek, they've got this stuff that sprays foam over stage rocks, and, you know, you might get insulation foam in your wall, cavity filling stuff. They sprayed over this, because it's like a dump, basically. They've just sprayed everything to cover it up, and they sprayed over this car. That's what he thinks they've done, you see. So, are we about ready to take a break, Maureen, by the way? Yeah, I'll do 2 more slides, I think, and then we'll take a break, if you like. We can take whatever you want as a break.
Is that all right with you folks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll stick it along.
I was
Okay,
just going to say that when you showed the first slide there, it looks like a cake that's just come out of the oven.
It could be that as well.
Yeah.
It was obviously a too hot one, it expanded too much. Here's another one. This is from Apollo 11. This is the edge of a crater. Now, we don't know how big this crater is. It could be a model, but look, this is it. Look at this one. This bonnet actually opens up almost halfway up the car. And on this one, he thinks the bonnet's popped up and actually, look, shape of a wheel. There's the thing. Is that the bonnet popping up? A similar car, you know. Could it be a car on the moon, or is it a toy car? We don't know the scale of this. It could be a toy car. It could be a huge size car. We don't know. This will be the last slide for the minute. We'll have a break. This is a window that's popped open on a capsule. Now, this is in test conditions. So when a window pops open on a capsule, it's not good because it means all the air sucks out of the capsule. So what do? You think, okay, well, we've got to repair this window. We're going to have to re-screw it in. No, they put gaffer tape over it. That's how they repaired it. Obviously, it didn't work well because when they went to space, it let in all the rain. You see? It's raining and cats and dogs on the moon. So we'll take a break for a minute, have a cup of tea and everything, and we'll resume maybe in half an hour or so. Oh. Sorry?
And that's where it's all going to cover chin, that's the cake. That there old moon rock.
Thank you for that, everybody.
Welcome back to part 2. Welcome back to part 2. Are you enjoying it? Yes. Is he any good?
Yes.
Hey.
I passed the audition.
You passed the audition.
I got the job.
Yeah. 3 yeses.
3 yeses. Okay. Are you ready then?
Back to part 2.
Back to part 2. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Hope you enjoyed the break. So we're going to continue now. We're going to race through this because there's a lot to get through. Now, obviously, these 6 missions to the moon, they didn't all go to the same spot. They went to allegedly different parts around the moon because, you know, lots of different things to look at. One of them was this, it's almost like a big trench. You think the trench in Death Star, you know, the great big long straight thing. Well, this is a similar thing, except it's a long big thing. And they call it Hadley Rill. And they landed Apollo, I think it might be Apollo 15 there. Now, it's meant to be really long and really deep. It's approximately 1,200 feet deep, okay? So Apollo 15 allegedly landed around there so that they could drive their little buggy and take a look in there. Now, that is roughly how deep it would be in comparison to the Empire State Building. So it's a huge drop, basically. King Kong was about that big. So they didn't take him, obviously, for obvious reasons. But sorry?
That much rope?
Yeah. So that's how deep they're meant to be looking at. But when you look at the pictures, it doesn't look that deep at all. It was more sort of a sand dune kind of depth. So, and also, you know, that's meant to be really, really wide. I mean, you can't really see it on there, but you can actually see lots of rocks over there, which you wouldn't really see at that kind of distance if it's as big as they say it is. So it's almost a simulation error, as Scott Enns calls it, an error in simulation. They really haven't made it as big as they've claimed it to be. Now, this is Meteor Crater in Arizona. This would be a similar kind of size to it. So essentially, you can't see rocks over here or down there because it's like a mile across. And so where we're looking back at this, that is meant to be the sort of same kind of size, you see, in certain parts of this Hadley Rill. But it doesn't bear any comparison to it, you see. So that's Meteor Crater, and that's supposedly the same kind of depth and width as Hadley Rill. Doesn't look like it at all. Now, spacesuits. Scott Henderson has been looking into the spacesuits. This is Neil Armstrong's spacesuit. So obviously in a vacuum, you want to make sure that you're sealed up and everything and nothing can escape. So it makes wonder why they got poppers and Velcro and zips and things like that. Because obviously the rain can get in when you're out in the winter with your little poppers and zips in your coat. It's not going, the air's going to escape. They claim that there's an inner bladder, what they call an inner bladder suit, a rubber suit that they get into inside their capsule and then put that on. Now, sorry? Like a diving suit, yeah, that goes inside it. That's a fair argument, I suppose. But when you see them pre-mission, they're getting suited up by technicians at NASA. They're having their gloves put on, they're having their suits, and they're just sitting there in these chairs while everyone's doing it. How are these guys getting these suits on or off inside the tiny capsule by themselves? It doesn't bear thinking about. And also, when they come out of the capsule at the end after it's splashed down, they're not in their spacesuits then. They're getting out in nice little NASA pajamas or something, I thought you meant to keep your spacesuit on when you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, kind of in case something goes wrong. There was a case where some Russians came out their space station, they re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, and there was a leak in their capsule, and they actually suffocated. So you'd think in that kind of dangerous situation, they'd have their suits on the whole time coming back to Earth. But when they climb out of the capsule, they're wearing these nice little sort of jumpsuits or something. So there we go. You can see the close-ups of these sort of things. This could be a display one, maybe, that they're just for photography and it's a different suit for the moon. I don't know. But there we go. There's Velcro there. There's the washing instructions, Don't tumble dry or something. Yeah, that's right. Now, shadows. You've probably heard a lot about the controversy of shadows, I expect. And Hank Marvin said he knows nothing. So this is one of the missions where you can see a shadow coming here, clearly from the left-hand side, and it's casting a rock shadow there. And yet, you got a shadow going that way. Now, two light sources, or is it the sun? Here's another one. This is from Apollo 15, I believe. This is a very clear indication. So you've got the shadows being cast in this direction, the astronaut shadow in that direction, and yet here you've got the shadow coming in from the left. So it indicates there's a light to the right and a light to the back, but there's only one light source, the sun. That can't be possible, can it? So I've been playing around with my own shadow, but for a minute, we'll see Bart Sibrel's explanation of shadows.
On a sunny day, or you look at two objects, these two telephone poles are about, 8 feet apart from one another. You see that the shadows never intersect. It's impossible for them to intersect because the sun is 93 million miles away. It has a diameter 1,000 times bigger than the Earth, and it's going to cast light evenly on any surface on the Earth. The shadows will fall in the same direction forever, all the time. And that's why when you look at pictures that were taken in a television studio, such as the moon landing pictures were, and here's an example, I believe this is from Apollo 14, you can see that you have an astronaut shadow going at 12 o'clock and a shadow of a rock over here going at about 9 o'clock. And they're only, about 5 feet apart from one another. So this is simply impossible to be taken by sunlight. You can even do a little side-by-side comparison here, and you'll see that this is simply impossible to have been taken with sunlight, which means it was taken with electrical light, which means it was taken in a television studio, which means they're on Earth, which means the moon landings are fake. So, this beleaguered attempt that we're about to see to disprove my movie goes something like this.
To test these conspiracy claims, we relied on our own technical knowledge as filmmakers to create a lunar set.
Oh, pride comes before a fall. They're boasting about what great filmmakers they are and how it makes them an expert. Uh-oh, they're in trouble.
We chose the Trona Pinnacles, a desert area 4 hours from Hollywood, the home of movie making. Our moon set will be used as a backdrop, not to fake our own lunar landings, but to challenge the hoax theories. And though we can't duplicate the intensity of the sun...
Oh, they can duplicate the intensity of the sun. You know how you do it? You wait 12 hours and go to the same spot and use the sunlight to simulate sunlight. But they're using electrical light to simulate sunlight. You see this? They say they can't duplicate the sun. Sure they can. They just wait 12 hours and shoot it during the sun, right?
Here in the night desert, our single studio light is powerful enough for our experiments. By testing some of the most famous conspiracy arguments, can we put the lunar fraud theories to rest?
Yeah, they're going to put them to rest. They're going to prove that they're true. So what they're doing is they're using an electrical light to simulate the sunlight to see if the shadows intersect or not. Real interesting, huh?
Once and for all. The morning after the shoot, the negatives are developed at a professional processing laboratory in Los Angeles.
In our experiment in the desert, we shot a variety of photographs using different film formats. In this 35mm photograph, we see that the shadows of the crew members in our single light source very distinctly converge together. In fact, there's almost a 90-degree difference in the apparent shadow direction.
Okay, so he's saying, look, we simulated the moon pictures and they intersect, therefore the moon landings must be real. Hello, everybody. They used an electrical light to simulate the moon pictures. And just like I said, they do intersect at 90 degrees, which proves that the moon pictures were lit with electrical light. Do you see this? He actually proves that the moon landings were lit with electrical light, meaning that they're fake, all the while he's trying to convince you that the fact that the shadows intersect with an electrical light means that the moon landing pictures are real, when it's that very evidence that proves that they're false.
These results directly contradict the conspiracy claims. The results of our photographic experiment appear to be overwhelming.
Okay, they again said it contradicts the conspiracy claims when it does the exact opposite. It proves that the moon landings were shot with electrical light. I mean, this just boggles my mind. And when I point this out to these and other producers who were previously going to have me on the show, who paid me in advance, they refuse to have interviews of me aired, even if they're already spent tens of thousands of dollars paying me for it, flying me, putting me up in hotels. And they, once I contradict the story that the moon landings are real and prove it, then they don't have that evidence on the program. So how can the National Geographic actually be interested in finding out whether the moon landings are real or not? I mean, it's really, really amazing. So there you have it. I mean, we can look at it one more time. Let's just take a look at it.
And though we can't duplicate the intensity of the sun here in the night desert, our single studio light is powerful enough for our experiments. By testing some of the most famous conspiracy arguments, can we put the lunar fraud theories to rest once and for all? The morning after the shoot,
okay, that just repeats itself. So I did some experiments of my own a couple of weeks ago. This is me on the coast there, but it was a lovely day, so I thought, oh, I might as well take some pictures and try and simulate these Apollo photographs with the shadows. So I stood with the sun behind my back, just got out my phone camera, nothing special, photographed, and because these rocks, I thought, well, they could be like moon rocks. You can see all the moon rocks follow in the same direction, or in these cases, coastal rocks follow in the same direction, with my shadow stretching out. It was late afternoon, hence the long shadow, again, similar to the shadows of the moon pictures we'd just been looking at. And so I took some close-ups as well. And you can see all these shadows are going that direction. You do not see any shadows. I mean, there's a shadow there of a rock, but if we go back, that's that rock there. So it's being cast all to that point, you see. So there's some, all these shadows are all going that direction at my shadow. There's no shadows. I mean, for instance, this shadow, according to the moon picture, should be coming at a 90-degree angle that way. But it's not, because I'm using the sun. That's all those filmmakers had to do. They didn't have to try and film it at night so you got a black backdrop of space. All they're looking at is the sun. They're not looking to try and make the sky dark. So they could have filmed their thing in the daylight, but unfortunately that would have proved the point that Bart Sibrel's talking about. So here we go again. My shadow, the rocks are going the same shadow direction as me. And there it is again. Similar to my picture, these are going the same direction as the astronaut, but then this shadow on the right is coming that way. How can that happen? It must be two sources of light, electric light, close up, whatever. Doesn't work. The sun, the moon and the earth are kind of roughly the same distance to the sun. So it's not the fact that one's maybe, 240,000 miles away from here. It would still be the same kind of conditions with that kind of shadows on Earth as it is on the moon. Now, we get into some weird stuff here. This is one photograph. It's actually listed there. Apollo 15 is the mission. 40 and 41 is the last two digits. So this one was before, and that one's afterwards. And yet here we got a footprint here with this rock here. And yet in the next picture, the footprint has gone and it's been replaced by a rock. Why would they bother raking over their own footprints? There's no point. And yet there's a distinct difference. Maybe they got their pictures muddled up, maybe the other way around, but these pictures actually all come out on a slide film. So it's not a case of pictures sort of like one after the other. They're actually on a whole roll of slide film. So they should all come out sequentially numbered. And yet these distinctly slightly different. Yet it's probably only a minute or two apart in time. This is a weird one. Apollo 15, AS, Apollo spaceship, maybe it stands for, I don't know. Apollo Saturn, yeah, it could be. Apollo 15. So this is the moon. That looks like gaffer tape, and that looks like a bit of wood. Why would you do that? Why would you stick a bit of wood on the window of the spaceship and gaffer tape it there? What's the point? Are you trying to hold the window in that blasted out earlier? No one has come up with an explanation for that one. I'd be interested if anyone, maybe they're just testing out the sticking of their sellotape, thinking, let's test out this sellotape before we take it to the moon. We're in orbit, let's check it now, because we might need it when we get down to the moon. Let's stick a piece of wood that is extra weight and stick it on the window, and then we can take a nice clear photo of it. Weird, isn't it? Strange. No explanation for that one. Now, this is my research now, getting into my studies of the moon pictures, and some, I call them things, I label them as such and such, and that's not to say they are what I'm labeling it. It's just a way that when I'm labeling it up, I will call it something because I've got a distinct, I've got to describe it differently from the next picture. So I might call it a mouse or whatever it is, because I don't want to confuse it with a cat that I see later on in the picture. Now, this is from Apollo 11, and I've gone right in close, looking around in the craters on these pictures, and I looked at this and I thought, whoa, now I can appreciate it's blurry because I've zoomed right in, but to me I thought, that looks like a dead rat or a mouse on the moon. Now, given the fact that Scott Henderson has said that it's in Flagstone, Arizona, it's outside, you could in theory get a dead mouse or a dead rat out there. So what I've done is I've got the same picture, maybe we can ask the cat. Put the cat in front of the screen, it can check it out. I've coloured it in pink so you can kind of see a shape. So there's an ear, there's the head, that's where the legs are, and the tail comes around there somewhere. It looks like a dead mouse to me, but that could be this pareidolia effect or whatever they call it, pareidolia, whatever. So anyway, I carried on. I didn't write any letters to my psychiatrist that week, so I just carried on. Apollo 15, here we have an iron. So you might need it for ironing your spacesuit as you get back into the craft, making sure it's all nice and neat for the next load of astronauts to use it after you. Why do we have rocks with handles on it? That is bizarre, isn't it? Here's another one. Curling iron. That's when you're doing the old bit of hockey on the moon or something. Ice hockey on the moon. I mean, they went and picked out all these rocks and brought them back. I mean, this one comes with its own carrying handle, Easier to get up into the craft. What's that doing on the moon? Now, this is a strange one. This one, again, you perhaps can't see it from that distance. Like these great big oil drums? Well, that to me, it looks round. It's got a slight different level in there, and then it goes down. It's roundish oval, so you see it at an angle. But that looks like a tipped over oil drum or something similar to that. And then this is a huge square rock. Why do you get huge square rocks? It's almost like the Egyptians have carved this or something. So that shouldn't be on the moon, should it? And this is interesting. Now, I know they didn't have Photoshop in the 1960s. Photoshop didn't come out until the late 1980s. So in theory, this shouldn't be here. But I discovered repeat patterns of rocks on the moon. So this is Apollo 17. So you got this rock with 3 little black gaps there. It's repeated there. Then you got this rock here, repeated there. Why? So I showed this to Scott Henderson, our friend in Canada, and he actually found another version of this picture. And he said, well, look, here it is, but it hasn't got those repeat rocks in it. So on the one I found on Flickr or wherever, it has. And you're thinking, Well, okay, someone's photoshopped it, but why go to the Apollo mission photographs and just keep reproducing the rocks? Why have you got to add rocks to it? There's no sense, because if it's a genuine mission, you don't want to kind of add rocks, you just want to keep it as it is. But they've added rocks to it for some bizarre reason. So we press on and we find in the background, I found a seam that joins two mountains. Why is there a seam that joins two mountains? It should all be a nice... I've never seen a seam on an Earth mountain. You know, it's where they stitched it together or something, or cardboard or something, I don't know. Now this is, again, it's slightly blurry, I appreciate that. We're going to zoom out, you're going to see it bigger, but there's these two repeat shapes there. I mean, they look like little sandcastles to me, don't they? Like sort of little turrets on top. So there they are again, those same rocks, but then we've got these shapes, they're repeated. I mean, they look weird car-like things or something, but they're repeated again. So is that photoshopped again onto there? It's just a repeat shape. So this is the kind of pictures I go into. I go on the internet, I call up the images, and there's loads of them. You just go to Flickr. You can go to other websites and look at it, but Flickr's a good one. Type in Apollo missions and it'll bring up all the different ones, and you just spend all night going through it, and you can zoom in with your mouse, and best thing to do is look at where all the rocks are, even distant rocks. Sometimes you find interesting ones in distant rocks. I'm not saying you'll find it in every single picture, but now and again you find these weird things, these weird anomalies. This one, for instance, I found on a panoramic of Apollo 17. And that's where they get pictures and they kind of join them together, because the cameraman or the astronaut's taking a picture, click, 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 and then they join it all together. This looks like a door that's laying against a stack of rocks or something. I call it a plane door, because it's like one of those doors you open on a plane. And if it is a junk place in Flagstaff, Arizona, it could be an old door from a plane or a train or something. I don't know, but it's just been thrown against a rock there. Now, again, more weird, strange cut rocks. This one has got a weird rock there. Could be a wheel arch, you know. This one's got like little holes cut through it there, as if like the rock's chopped in half and someone's drilled holes or something. And again, you've got these strange, sharp edges to these rocks, as if they come from a building. Like, you know, like you've brought down a building. It's literally parts of it's all broken up. It's almost like that kind of look to it. Now this is what I thought I tore a putty cat, this one. On this rock, there's this weird design, and it looks like two eyes, a nose, cat's ears, and it's like a big cat picture, cartoony looking cat on the rock. Can you see it there? Can you see it? That's weird. And that's on a rock. Yeah, Bagpuss on the moon. Yeah. So, and you're looking thinking...
To the right of that, like a face type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Nose and the two eyes.
Yeah.
It's like a tail.
To that
side of it, though, it's like a dog's face there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a dog, cat, but I mean, I call it a cat because it's the way I've labelled it.
To the side of it there.
Yeah.
It looks like a dog. Doesn't it look like a dog's face?
You're barking up the wrong tree there.
Yeah.
With a white face.
I mean, I know that there is this thing where you can supposedly make images, but I mean, that's clearly like an image that's painted on a rock to me. I mean, there's this idea of whistleblowers, people that are in on the missions and they know that it's fake, and so they put these secret clues there in the hope that members of the public will maybe read into it. This again is from Apollo 17. You got this little rock here, the same face here. They look like little cookies or something, you know, with little faces, but it's the same rock stacked there, and they've kind of put it together. And thinking, what is the chances of those rocks having the same faces right next door to each other on the moon?
Are they rocks or caves?
Well, they're rocks, only probably about that high, but they've got these little weird doors or something to them, fronts the rocks, but they look like faces. But there's the fact that they look like duplicates of each other.
See what that reminds me of? I use Photoshop quite a bit, and when you use the
clone tool, yeah.
And then put it down, and quite often
Yeah,
you duplicate.
yeah, I understand exactly, because I use Photoshop, and I looked at it and I thought, well, that looks like clone tool to me, but this is pre-Photoshop. So what are they doing cloning there? If they are doing it later on, why are they doing it? This one, there's it looks like letters to me, and I worked out the letters could say EAD, but is there a letter missing? Dead, you know? what's that about? But there was a lady in Australia when she stayed up to watch the Apollo moon landings, Apollo 11, and it was being broadcast live to Australia in the early hours. So she stayed at Uma, something or other her name was, I can't remember her name now. But she said that she was watching it live as it happened, And suddenly she claimed that she saw a Coca-Cola bottle get rolled into vision on the camera. And she thought, oh my God, this is so fake. There's a Coca-Cola bottle on the moon. That can't be right. So she told her friends the next day. So they all stayed to watch the repeat of it. And of course, the Coke bottle wasn't there the next day, you know. So there we go. Coke adds life. So that's the sort of where I've found a lot of these shots you just seen. This is where I've taken it from. So you've got an astronaut here. I think that's Harrison Smith, the geologist, walking along. And I've literally zoomed in on all these areas and I've found all these weird shaped rocks in there. Like that, for instance. So if I just go back, Harrison Smith's here. I found that thing roughly around here. Now the argument could put, oh, it's falling off his astronaut suit, a piece of kit or something like that. Fair enough. Might have fallen off. It looks like the sort of case you have for a mobile phone, doesn't it? That's what it. Of course, they didn't have those in those days, but a picture frame or something weird. What's that doing there? Storm drain cover. Storm drain. Now this is Pigs in Space. Anyone remember the Muppets? Pigs in Space. Again, these duplicate rocks right next to each other, definitely cloned in Photoshop. You know, this is slightly lighter than that one, but look at this rock here, there. You've got these little rocks here, they're all repeated. The shadow there, the shadow there. Yes. Definitely a copy of that. They may have tweaked one level a bit, but why have they done that on these Apollo photos? There's no need to do it. If these are genuine pictures, why are you cloning these images?
Why, if they wanted to deceive people, would they make it so obvious?
Yeah, yeah. But this is...
It's in sight, isn't it? It's in plain sight.
Yeah, yeah.
Just taking a mickey.
Now these are weird things. Again, I appreciate if you can't see it from back there, but I saw these strange pipes, you know, could be old pipes. Someone might say it's lava or something on the moon, but then again, we've seen these weird stuff anyway, so I can't think it would be lava. It's odd bits of machinery, pipes and stuff like that. This, ignore that bit, it's this bit I'm interested in. It looks like a kind of, I call it a pallet with holes in, but it looks like a, think of an old crate or something, like the old milk crates or something. It looks like something with the holes in, laid against this rock here, but it's like loads of holes in it. I mean, you could say it's meteorite holes or something, but it looks just artificial to me. Now this is weird. Now this is in the bottom of a crater from Apollo 17. Strange scraps. They don't look like rocks. It almost looks like metal that's folded and buckled. I mean, look, this is like sheets of metal that's just buckled together, and that's not like a rock. It's like just folded over. Like, it's almost like a tent, but it's not a tent, but it's like a hollow rock. There's nothing under there. It's just literally, it's like cardboard that's sprayed and just laid in a weird shape. It doesn't look like rocks at all. But from a distance, when you just go, oh, that's Apollo 17, you see it, your eye sees it subconsciously. But when you zoom in, it's like on Star Trek, isn't it? When you zoom in, you see the edge of the set or something. You can see the wires. Yeah, 3 squares there on that. What's that? That looks artificial. That should be not 3 squares on that crater thing. Same rocks again, duplicates on this one.
Skeleton head at the back.
Skeleton head, yeah, yeah. The old Nazis are creeping in. Pipes and jerry cans. So this to me looks like an old jerry can you might get of an old wartime Jeep or something that's tipped over, been sprayed with this stuff. And then you got these pipes. That looks a weird shape there. I'm not quite sure what that is. But there's this pipe here that's laying there, you know. The old plumbers got to the moon before they did, you know. And of course, everyone remembers that Buzz Aldrin took his Amiga wristwatch to the moon. Well, he must have dropped it because I think I found it over there. See the wristwatch, it definitely's got straps to it and a little bit in the centre. Probably time to launch. Now this is one, again there's a rock, but it looks like it's chiseled away and it's like 2 segments in there, like an inner section to this rock. It's like a layer and a layer and then a sort of a sunken part in each section. And again, with a clone tool, it almost looks like a clone has been made, but fainter, as if they, you know, reduced the opacity level on the clone tool, because it almost looks like a duplicate of that. And again, that shouldn't be there. These, by the way, these lines, in case you're wondering, that's what they call the crosshairs. They put them all in all these Apollo photographs. It's the idea is it helps the engineers and the people, the scientists, measure distances on the moon or something.
Piece there have been just upturned so it goes the other way.
It could be. It could be. It's just a bit of a weird coincidence that shadow does look very much like that. It looks an attempt, but reduced opacity.
If you flip the piece on the right over,
Hmm.
it would marry up with the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it's like a phase as well, doesn't it?
Battery rock on the moon. Here we go. This little thing looks like a battery or something that with a shadow. Now, there's a film coming up and I can't remember what it is. So I'm going to have a quick look. What is it? Sounds on the Moon. Yeah. If I just go back, I'll explain about this. There's another filmmaker called Geddes-Ward, American guy. He's also, like Bart Sibrel, looked into the whole thing of Apollo missions and everything like that. Now, if you think of films like Star Wars, Star Trek, when you see them firing their laser guns at each other and explosions, you all hear it and it's all dramatic. But in the vacuum of space, you should not hear any sounds because sounds require air to travel in. It's always a bit like that thing. Do you hear a forest tree fall in a forest if no one's there and stuff like that, you know? You need your ears to hear, but you also need the sound waves to travel through the air. But we have evidence here of sounds being recorded on the moon, which technically is impossible. But NASA apologists, these fans, will try and explain it away. How on earth they can do that? But watch this.
You see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying. But maybe you've seen a demonstration of a bell under a glass jar. With normal air inside the jar, you could hear the bell clearly. But when the vacuum pump drew the air out of the jar, there was nothing inside to carry the vibrations of the bell. Nothing until the air was let back into the jar.
Photo numbers. And this is clear tube number 2. Okay, you're almost driving without a hammer.
So he's going to hammer something into the moon. This astronaut.
Take a couple more shots of this before we leave. Get all in, I get the pictures. Alright? Driving in real easy, Houston.
The sounds in space, it's odd
This is
to
on the
have
shuttle
a hammer or a
International
metal
Space
tool
Station
and
where
bang
they're
it
using
against
tools.
something
So
you hear
he's making a
absolutely
comparison to more modern astronauts.
You can, you know, sound won't travel in a vacuum. So there you are outside and you can be hitting something, no sound at all.
In space, since there's no atmosphere, there's no air, if you bang on something when you're doing your spacewalk, you will not be able to hear that.
And this leads us to the dilemma of our final segment. All modern astronauts, such as Piers Sellers and Mike Massimino, claim to hear absolutely nothing when they're out on the International Space Station in the vacuum, banging away with metal tools and objects, whereas during the Apollo missions, all kinds of sounds have been recorded that should not be possible if they are on the moon in the vacuum of space.
This is Mission Control Houston. We want to welcome you to NASA Television's live coverage from the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we get ready for another spacewalk by the crew of
So,
okay, copy. Notice the complete silence during this modern EVA at the International Space Station. If the astronauts aren't speaking, you hear dead silence.
And I show the arm is safe.
Thank you. Good. The major difference between the Apollo missions and modern spacewalks, such as you just saw at the International Space Station, is that when the astronauts are working on the space station, out in space, in a true vacuum, when they are not transmitting directly through their mics with their voices, you hear dead silence. In the Apollo missions, you can hear all kinds of sounds. The sound of 2 very hard hammer blows transmitted through Dave's gloves into the suit and to his microphone can be heard between his grunts. And we return to the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal, which more and more begins to look like damage control and misdirection. And here's what they have to say about the Apollo 17 hammering. The last paragraph there at the bottom. What seems likely is that when Gene hits the rock, the hammer rebounds against the palm of the pressurized glove, creating a sound wave in the suit loud enough to be picked up by the microphone at Gene's lips. In brief, the suit acts like a drum. But the suit never acts like a drum at the International Space Station, where we are about to watch an astronaut use a power tool.
All right, buddy, we're going to stop at 20 turns.
Understand we have a go?
Affirm.
All right, here it comes.
Nothing at all.
Total, utter silence, which is exactly what you are supposed to get if you are in the vacuum of space, and it is exactly what you get in all modern spacewalks. Now let's return to Apollo 12.
Okay, the fact you're almost driving without a hammer. But if you hand it to me, I'll get it in a second. I'm going to take a couple more shots of this bullshit. Get all in, I get the pictures. All right? Drive in real easy, Houston.
That does not sound like the spacesuit acting like a drum at all. It sounds like a metal hammer striking a metal object repeatedly with authority. Pictured is Alan Bean during Apollo 12 striking a metal core tube into the so-called lunar surface with a metal
Alan Bean's
hammer.
the one that thought we didn't go through the Van Allen radiation
This is an
belts.
interview
by the
with
way.
Apollo astronauts Alan Bean and Pete Conrad, done by the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal. They are once again taking the position that the sound is coming through the hand and transmitting into the microphones in the helmet. Alan Bean says, "I would have said it wasn't possible," and Pete Conrad responds, "The other guy can't hear it." If the sound is coming through Alan Bean's microphone, then like his voice, it must be transmitted directly into the headset of Pete Conrad, so his statement makes no sense. Alan Bean's statement makes a lot of sense, since it would not have been possible in a vacuum. When Bean says, "I would have said it wasn't possible," he has science on his side. And he also has NASA on his side, at least up until August 19th, 2011. And this brings us to the most important graphic in the film. This is a web page that has been disappeared from the internet by NASA as of August 2011. It was at nasa.gov, running concurrently with the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal between 2009 and September 2011. However, this page, which was created for children, you can see the banner at the top, Lunar Science for Kids. This page directly contradicts the assertions made in the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal concerning the hammering sounds in Apollo 12, 15, and 17. This page talks about the science involved with sound on the moon, and it does so correctly. And that is why NASA has disappeared it from the web. The contradiction between the journal and this page was brought up in the very popular Moon Zoo forum. And that is where I first became aware of the situation. Reader Tom128 pointed out the contradiction between the site for children and the journal. And I went looking for the site for children and could not find it. I then went to my favorite research tool, the Wayback Machine at archive.org, and I was able to find an old version of the page that NASA did not clean up. And whenever I see information go missing from the web, it always starts me thinking, and this was the genesis of the film. At that moment, I became a NASA moon hoax researcher. You've seen the image on the right of the graphic before. That is Alan Bean hammering a core tube during Apollo 12, and this is the sound of such hammering. The graphic is problematic for NASA because of the contradiction to the journal, and the graphic is correct science. And I quote, Sound needs something to travel through to get from one place to another. On the moon, since there is no air, sound cannot travel above the surface. So, there are no sounds on the surface of the moon. When the Apollo astronauts were out on the moon's surface, they could only talk to each other and to mission control by using the radios in their air-filled helmets. Even when the astronaut in the photo to the right hit a metal tube into the ground with a hammer, no sound was made.
But it was.
All of the sounds so far analyzed were made by the astronauts as they were handling tools, but now we are going to analyze some sounds that are made a distance away from the astronauts.
He throws something up at the lunar module. There, do you hear that?
So what you just saw appears to be a smoking gun. That scene, which was broadcast live to the world during Apollo 15, shows astronaut James Irwin. He takes this cord or band off of a canister, and those canisters are in the mesa table, which Irwin is standing in front of. He unravels the cord, which has two metallic locks at the end of it, pictured here. They look like bullets. He takes that off, he unravels it, he reaches back with his right hand, and he throws the cord away. Let's take another look at it.
Thrown at your spaceship that you'll need later on to take off from the moon. No risk of damage to it then.
So the argument has been made for the hammering that the sound is coming through the glove and it's miraculously getting into the microphones. But we don't have to deal with that argument because James Irwin releases the object and it hits the ship and he's not touching it, and that sound is picked up by the microphone. The microphone inside the astronaut's helmet. And you can always tell that that's the microphone in play because you will always hear the sound of the suit air supply system in the background whenever the astronaut is transmitting, and you will hear this sound remain on for a split second after the astronaut stops transmitting. Both the outside of the ship and the inside of the ship in the cabin are in the vacuum because the lunar module does not have an air hatch. So when the astronauts leave the lunar module, it is depressurized. Microphones in the lunar module plug into the audio centers. The only voice possibilities are through the use of the headsets. They took off with 6 microphones, 3 Snoopy caps. Each astronaut also had a lightweight headset at launch. While they were on the moon and the suspect audio event took place, they were wearing their Snoopy caps. Communication cables, which are the umbilical cords that the astronauts plugged into while in the lunar module, as you can see from the checklist, were stowed prior to EVA. Also, looking at the same exact checklist, we can see that the lightweight headsets were also stowed prior to EVA. So, there were no live microphones inside the cabin. So now let's take another listen, and we will slow down the audio so you can hear the air supply unit remain on for a split second after the object hits the ship.
Okay, so there we go. Sounds on the moon. So they're arguing the point saying that the suit acts like a drum. So when he's banging something onto the moon, it travels up into his arm, and that's where the microphone in his space helmet can pick it up. But they just proved there when they throw it onto the lunar module, it can't be a drum on their suit because it's being picked up externally away from the suit. And we saw the example there, the guys working on the International Space Station using similar tools. If their suit was acting like a drum, you'd hear all the sounds coming through their thing, so it can't be. So it must mean that they're on a set with air in it for that to happen. And we shall get on to this now. This is the Apollo 15 Franken a stamp. I'll just come back to that a second. This is where they took some stamps to the moon and they're using a stamper, like we might have used as kids in post office, to frank a stamp on the moon. How can ink be used on the moon in a vacuum? That would boil away and vanish off. But somehow you're seeing this happen. And I want you to look at when he stamps it, there's a suction as he lifts it off the card, which suggests there's a suction of air as it makes that seal with the ink. Watch the hand come off like that.
I'll never find a postcard.
Look at him stamping it. There's getting the ink. He's pressing it onto the envelope or the card. And you watch him lift it off. Ready? It's a slight suction as he pulls it off. Ready? Here we go. Pull it off. Pull it off. Oh, there it goes. So it's like, as the suction comes off. Now, NASA claim they made a special stamper. I've never found it. Of course, they always make these special stampers for the moon. So there it is in slow motion, zoomed in. There it is again. Stamping this stamp. And he pulls it off. That's ink going onto that stamp. And he pulls it off. And it's causing a suction. Where's that suction come from? There's that suction. There's a, as you pull it off. Can't happen. Okay. This is an extract from a book by Trevor Weaver, who later takes part in our Apollo detectives. And we're looking at the gravity now of the moon. 1/6 of the gravity on the moon, supposedly. But in this video, we examine the astronauts jumping on the Apollo moon. It says NASA demonstrated the classic hammer and feather to show us that all objects dropped together fall at the same time. Okay, so he's got a falcon feather and a hammer. And he's talking about Galileo talked about hundreds of years ago that all objects, regardless of what they are, fall at the same speed. Now, obviously, if you dropped a feather in our atmosphere, it would flutter because the air's catching the feathers. So on the moon, where there's no air, he's going to drop the hammer and the falcon feather. And in theory, because there's no air on the moon, they should drop and hit the moon surface at the same time. Now, we suspect that's a fake feather because it's been done in a studio in England with a feather and it goes boom, straight down. You can make an artificial feather, it's no problem. But here they go, look, they drop at the same time. Okay, so they're trying to prove gravity on the moon. But unfortunately, they're let down when you see the moon dust. So according to Galileo and NASA, objects drop from the same height in a vacuum together, fall at the same speed, and they hit the ground at the same time. So let's examine the NASA moon gravity of jumping astronauts. What you've got to look at here is the sand or the moon dust or whatever it is that falls from their feet. So when they jump up, the sand comes up with them. They should both touch the ground at the same time. Their boots and the sand should touch the ground at the same time. But the sand hits the ground at the same time. Then a few seconds later, the astronaut comes down. And it's because the astronauts are alleged to be suspended on wires to give them that floaty look. They can't simulate the gravity of sand because they just haven't got the technology to do it.
The falcon feather was very symbolic. The fact that we used that, if that's what they said we used, that's symbolic of Egyptian mythology. Horus.
It was also the name of their ship, the Falcon. Yeah. Can you see that, Sandra? Is the picture too dark? That's a bit brighter. See that sand? Look, the sand is touching the ground and then they die. Boom. Now we do a comparison at the end with a volleyball player playing on a beach, jumping up, and the sand from the beach jumps up at the same time and lands. You'll see that in a second.
At the back of his pack there, you can see the light reflecting on the string.
It could be that's probably his aerial, communication aerial, but there has been episodes where you can see something glint in the sunlight, which they suspect could be cables. There's a very good film on the allist.com website called Smoke and Mirrors that looks into all this very, very deeply. So I'd recommend, I'll show you at the end of the website, recommend looking at that. They go into the whole thing where they change the frame rate of the film, and they show you about harnesses and things, and how these astronauts can just lift off, they fall over, but they lift off almost magically off the moon. Look at that sand drop into the ground first before the astronaut drops to the ground. Sand drops, then the astronaut touches. Sand drops, then the astronaut touches. There we go. Yeah, that's the jump salute. Now that's John Young, the one that ran away from Bart Sibrel in the hotel lobby. So, in fact, if he should be actually going a lot higher on the moon. Yeah. There's also evidence that they suggest his backpack is going up, as if he's being pulled up by the backpack. Yeah. And also these astronauts are walking around with these backpacks perfectly straight when the weight of them should pull them back like that. If you ever sort of been camping and got a thing on your back, it pulls you back a bit. They're walking around as if nothing's in there.
But we're not be weightless on the moon.
Well, there's 1/6 of the gravity, so you will have a certain amount of weight. But look at that dust. It's hitting the ground before he does, you see. And they should all come down exactly the same time. Now, I think we're going to cut any second now to the volleyball player, yeah. So this is the volleyball jump, doing the same kind of thing, except he's playing volleyball. Now watch the sand that rises with his feet. There it comes up, and as he touches the ground, the sand drops down at the same time, you see? So we've got a comparison here. So let's compare with the astronaut with the volleyball player. So here he is, sand on the volleyball player, jumps up and falls down, with the sand on the astronaut on the left, that's already touching the ground before he comes back down. And yet, physics suggest they should both be falling to the ground at the same time, especially on the moon pictures. And Trevor, who wrote the book, he believed in Apollo. He believed it fundamentally. He used to argue with his kids that he said it was true. But then he started to look at this and it kind of convinced him that it wasn't. So it's using slow motion and wire harnesses that they'd use in film and theatres and things like that. Trevor Weaver. Yeah, he's taken it from Smoke and Mirrors. That's the book he's got if you're interested. He explains all about it in there. So I'll go to the next thing now. Okay, we're coming to the end of the talk now, so I just want you to sort of look at this. Now, we've all seen these astronauts wear their lunar boots, so this is the kind of print they'd wear. Now, there was controversy about whether they can actually leave prints in the lunar soil. Because it's very dry, if you go out onto a beach and you're wearing your beach shoes and you're walking around on the sand dune, you don't leave prints in the sand. In fact, the sand just crumbles away. But if you're on a wet beach, you leave prints there. So the suggestion was that there could be moisture in this sand, and that's why it's making these prints there. Now, the Apollo people say, no, that's incorrect. The tiny microscopic parts of the sand on the moon, they interlock, so they kind of hold together and bind together. There was that program called Mythbusters, and they tried to test this idea by using simulated lunar soil in a vacuum, and they got a moon boot and pressed down on it. It made a very poor impression of a print on the surface of their imitation lunar surface, but it was nothing like this. So now, if you're a detective and someone's done a murder and you see some tracks in the ground, in the mud or whatever, you're going to say, okay, let's take a plaster cast of that print, and this could be the killer with this type of shoe. So if you find another shoe that's a different cast, that throws some doubt, thinking, well, there could be another accomplice. We've got to look for a guy wearing a different set of shoes then. Or was that from some other time? So, but because these guys are on the moon, we should only be looking at one type of lunar print. So what's this? What is this tennis shoe print doing on the moon? So here's our lunar prints, and then there's this curved tennis shoe style thing there. This was discovered by a researcher called Jack White, not Jarrah White, Jack White. Now, some people are suggesting it's the Apollo astronauts, they're twisting and things like that. But if they're twisting, we should see this kind of evidence all the time in other photographs. But this is one of the very few photographs where we see this different style of curved kind of lunar shoe, or shoe of sorts. Could it be the mysterious Mr. Jones, who we saw appear on the paper in our little script that goes on their arms? He could be directing it. Could it be a whistleblower thing, you know, to alert you? This appears in 1 or 2 pictures only. You point this out to NASA people or Apollo fans and go, oh, no, it's definitely their prints. But to me, it looks like a completely tennis shoe. I actually spent a few evenings on the internet trying to find tennis shoes from 1971, the sole prints, to see if I could find a match for it. I couldn't, unfortunately, because that sort of stuff wasn't really published or available. But it doesn't look like, it's got a definite curve in that kind of grip, whereas the Apollo shoe has got very, very straight, rigid lines going across.
Could that be part of his moon boot come adrift?
Well, it shouldn't do. It's all moulded in. It's all sort of pulled into his foot.
It's like a plastic thing.
Overshoe. Yeah, it's an overshoe. That's right. Yeah, and when you did take off these over boots, they didn't have any tread on them anyway, the undersoles. So if some mysterious reason he took off his lunar outer boot, if you say, and walked around on these things, they're literally like the end of my soles, just nothing on there. So you shouldn't even get a tread appear on there. You see. Right. Some other things. Now this is the final thing. I think it's about the flag. Controversy about the flag.
This is Apollo 14. The astronauts have just completed their second excursion on the moon during EVA-2, and they have gone back into the ship, and they are preparing now to jettison what they will not be taking with them back to the moon.
They're about to take off, in other words. They're throwing any extra bits out they don't need. The flag is just to the right.
Total of 8 times. It will move into the picture 4 times, then it will move out of the picture 4 times. Something is clearly blowing it, and the astronauts are in the ship preparing to jettison. Here it is on the right side. You see it comes in. That's the first time it moves.
No one touching it.
Just watch it. It's just blowing there to the left, and then it's going to blow back to the right, and that'll be the second instance.
There it goes out again.
There we go. Blew back to the right. Have you seen that before? I don't think so. I don't think you've seen that before.
Okay,
Recall that we are in a vacuum, and there is virtually no air pressure capable of making wind. So, what is happening here? There it is again. Quite spectacular if you haven't seen it before. Just blowing in the breeze. And there is no possible scientific explanation that fits this scenario with the astronauts in the ship. This is a clear smoking gun, folks. Clear smoking gun.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a sustained blow here to the left. It's still there. Still blowing in the breeze.
If it's blowing to the left, the wind's got to be coming from the right. Okay.
We've been told by NASA and their defenders that anytime you seem to see the flag moving, that in reality, it's only moving because the astronauts are touching it and maneuvering it. And the only other time that NASA has stated the flag moved is when the rockets fired during the ascent from the moon, and the jet blast comes back and ricochets off the descent stage, which remains on the moon, and causes a wind blast that makes the debris scatter and the flag move. It's important for you to see this in its entirety without me editing it. So we're just going to be quiet here for a minute or two until the last few flag waves happen on the right, and then we will move on. Enjoy the music and pay attention.
Here it comes. There it is slightly. Going out again. There it comes.
There it goes. There's number 5. It will blow back. That's number 6. And here comes number 7. And there goes number 8. Okay, that's 8 times.
Okay, so basically the argument from NASA fans is that because they're throwing their stuff out the lunar module onto the ground, they're decompressorizing the vehicle, because what they're doing, they're throwing their backpacks out. Now the backpacks, or when they're normally walking around the moon, is the thing that gives them oxygen to breathe through. So what they've done is they're allegedly connecting up to the air oxygen system inside the craft, so they don't need their backpacks. They're throwing all the stuff out to make the ship lighter to launch off, and so therefore they've depressurized their cabin. Now, this is over some time that you see this flag moving around. So if they've depressurized the cabin, all that air has gone whoosh out into the vacuum space straight away. It doesn't gently blow out like a nice breeze or whatever like that. It's just sucked out within about 3 or 4 seconds. As soon as they open that door, it's disappeared into the vacuum of space. But their argument is that these molecules of air are somehow traversing across the moon's surface, blowing it that way, blowing it this way, blowing it that way, blowing it this way. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, really, but that's what they're trying to explain it. And yet previously, they're saying, oh no, the flag only moves when someone touches it. And now they're caught with this one. They're trying to argue that it's air coming out the ship. Goes worse. Anyway, so for further information, I mentioned allthis.com. This will go into a lot of debunking exercises across the whole of this Apollo thing. It talks about Mars as well. But if you're interested, feel free to take photographs of this if you want, or just write it down. Allthis.com. Originally started by David Percy and Mary Bennett, who wrote the book Dark Moon in 1999, where I first learned about the alleged Apollo hoax and things like that. But it's got lots of good articles. Some of the Apollo detectives that appear with us also write articles and appear on there. Recently, in the last couple of years, NASA have declared the Apollo landing sites no-fly zones. So they kind of made a law for themselves, saying that any other nation that has a rocket or anything is not to fly over at least 2 of the lunar sites. That's Apollo 11 and Apollo 17. You're not to come within a few meters of it, or 100 yards of it, or a couple of miles. I can't remember the distance now. Because it's like a sacred site. You're not to destroy the land of it and things like that. Or could there be other reasons they don't want you to fly over it? Because it's not there, really, you know. They make their own rules as they go along.
Where did the register, land registry?
Well, exactly, yeah. They originally asked voluntarily, because they know that other nations now are getting their rockets all, you know, the Indians, the Chinese and things like that are getting rockets up there in space, and they've had attempts by various craft to land on the moon. The Indians and I think Israel failed in their attempt to land on the moon. But they're asking none of these nations to fly over their spots. They don't want them to look at them. Also, the other thing, the argument is that the data tapes, which is the stuff where you record all the telemetry data, that's like the speed of the rocket, or the health of the astronaut inside the spaceship, the distance it is on the computer that tells you it's so far out into space from the Earth or close to the moon. All that stuff that was stored on data tapes has been lost. NASA admit they've lost it all. So people that want to examine this data for themselves can't go in and look at it. You know, they recorded I Love Lucy over it or something, you know. Apparently they admit they also erased the Apollo 11 the landing tapes, the original landing, although they'd got a copy of it. They decided to record over it. Can you believe that? They recorded over the most historical moment in history, and they taped the football match over it or something. You know, it's crazy, isn't it? And they admitted it.
If you like. Could get done for illegal dumping as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but of course they leave all their rubbish. You know, this is in the days before we were trying to save planet Earth. Further information, you're obviously familiar with Richard D. Hall, and you may have seen this, Analysing the Astronauts, for those that haven't. This is where he engages the services of Peter Hyatt, that's right, and he takes the interviews of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and he analyses it, breaks down his voice patterns and things like that, and the words he uses, and he comes to the conclusion that he's not quite being truthful, should we say. He's being economical with the truth, as they like to say in Parliament.
Well, they weren't excited, were they?
No, exactly. Yeah, the press conference, they're like naughty schoolboys caught behind the bike shed, as Marcus Allen puts it. Allthis.com, this is a film you'll find on that website, allthis.com, What Happened on the Moon, made in about 2000 and something. It's quite a long film. I think it's in 2 parts, but that's worth watching. It talks about, you know, the wires that might have lifted them off, the radiation, the rockets, you know, were they powerful enough to actually get to the moon? I mean, what they believe is that the Saturn V, although we all saw it launch into the sky and it disappears into the horizon, well, what they theorise is that that's all it went. It probably, you know, just went over and crashed into the Atlantic somewhere because it wasn't powerful enough to lift all that right up to the moon. Bart Sibrel, filmmaker, we've seen a few of his clips there. He's actually just written a book called Moon Man. So if you're interested in his book, go to Amazon, support him if you like. Moon Man, the true story of a filmmaker on the CIA hit list. He actually goes into detail about he's got people that have allegedly said to him, we were there when they filmed the moon landing in a desert or something, and I was the guy that worked on the security and, you know, that kind of insider sort of information. So I'm going to buy that book myself at some point soon.
Stanley Kubrick.
Well, Stanley Kubrick is alleged to have been that, but I think that's not true myself. I can't see that happening. I mean, the daughter of Stanley Kubrick said that, you know, she spent so much time with him that she couldn't possibly see how he was involved in the moon landings because she was with him pretty much the whole time. And his own daughter actually appeared in 2001 as the little girl, talking to the main character through the kind of their version of Skype or whatever it was, their telescreen communication system in 2001. So she spent a lot of time with her dad, and so she says there's no way that he seemed to be involved in any kind of fabrication of the moon thing. But I think that could be false information put out there to throw us off the scent of the real people that are involved.
Yeah, because there's no reason why you would have to be involved.
Yeah. I mean, he could have been threatened.
Top level filmmaker.
Yeah.
That, do you?
I mean, it could be. See, the thing is, Stanley Kubrick was a director. He wasn't a special effects expert. He engaged other people to do special effects. So, for instance, when he did 2001, he got the guy who did the special effects for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was Doug Trumbull, to do the special effects on 2001. Doug Trumbull did many, many films. Star Trek, Close Encounters, Silent Running, other stuff like that. Now, I don't think he was experienced enough at his young age then, back in the late 60s, to do any special effects then. But he might have been. He was quite a good filmmaker in that sort of sense. But the thing is about the military, they have their own film units. They don't go to Hollywood to make their films. They have their own film units. People that are highly trained in making films for them. And so when NASA has these films of rockets going up, it's not filmed by Hollywood people. It's filmed by NASA's employees or military people. And let's face it, NASA is a front for anything military. You know, when you see a satellite go up and it says, oh, this is to measure the clouds or something in the upper atmosphere. Well, that's perhaps true, but there's also a lot of other kit in that rocket that's going to do other stuff that you're not going to know about because it's all hidden, like spy on Chinese or something. There's a few extra things in that rocket that are going up we're not going to know about. I've already mentioned Trevor Weaver and Marcus Allen. They've actually got together and produced this book, The Apollo Moon Hoax, The Real Evidence, a reference guide to the facts. That's also worth reading, again, if you want to go into that a bit deeper. And Andrew Johnson, who's been here, so you know him well, he's got his website, checktheevidence.com. He goes into the Apollo Moon hoax theory as well. So there's lots of interesting articles on his website as well as the Apollo stuff. So yeah, brilliant researcher, so check the evidence. Ben Emlyn Jones, his website there. Paranormal UK Radio, because I host on there, so you might want to check that out. The Paranormal Peep Show is what I co-host. Nexus Magazine is what Marcus produces. He distributes that, so that's got some really interesting articles as well. Jarrah White of YouTube, he's one of the other, he's based in Australia. He comes onto our show occasionally, but he's got his Moon Faker series of videos on his own website, and he really looks a lot. He's quite technical. He's actually an astrophysicist. He's also a geologist, so he kind of knows his stuff, and yet he still doesn't believe they went to the moon. And that's the end. So if anyone wants to email me, there's my email address, and if anyone wants to know what that is, that's the moon. And did we really go there? I don't think so.
You've got Prince.
And I've got Prince as well, which you can come have a look at as well at the end. Any questions?
Do you think...
Oh, hang on. Yeah, go on.
Do you think that it was all filmed previously and then shown?
Most likely. According to what we've seen so far, they were rehearsing some footage of Apollo 10 to see if it worked, and then they tried the same thing in Apollo 11. So There was obviously testing out their shots to make sure that they worked. In the same way the astronauts were receiving training going to the moon, that was a very public part of it. They'd show that on their newsreels and things, astronauts training on moon cars and buggies and in their spacesuits and things like that. But behind the scenes, I suspect as they were perhaps preparing and working out ways they could simulate the moon, and they probably must have filmed a lot of test shots on that, for instance, harnesses, men on wires and things. The only thing they couldn't get was the lunar gravity correct because of the sand falling not at the same speed. But I suspect they probably... See, the thing is, there's an argument saying, oh, but how can 400,000 people at NASA and the contractors keep it a secret? But the thing is, you don't tell them all, These people believed they were sending people to the moon. Now, I've had people come to me and say, oh, but my relatives worked on the moon project, so I know it's real. Yeah, the moon project was real, but it doesn't prove that we went to the moon, I mean, I can say, I've got a ticket to Newcastle from London, so that proves I went on a train, but it doesn't prove anything. It's just a ticket. You see?
It's a bit like all wars are fake, but soldiers don't know that.
Exactly. Yeah, wars are set up by the rich men at the top, and you're just the man with a gun, you're the cannon fodder.
Yeah, Neil. The space race, when JFK made that famous speech, and he said, what sort of project is to get man on the moon? The Russians knew that it couldn't be done, because they knew they had already tried and they'd lost people trying to do that. Now, JFK was a Freemason. NASA is a military organisation. All astronauts are Freemasons.
Yeah.
It's one big conspiracy.
Mm.
And they just wanted to get one over the Russians. That's what it was about, the whole space race thing. And I do think it was a collusion. But do you think it was filmed in studio and on set outside?
Possibly. If the wet flag on Apollo 17 is anything to go by, then it could have been filmed outside, although I don't know how they probably did the background, maybe having a big extra large set. If you look at the film Smoke and Mirrors, it's a really long film on the Allis website. That's a really long film. I think it's in a couple of parts. Originally, the person that put that together is very skilled as a filmmaker, but what they did, they disguised their own voice, and you couldn't really understand it. Their voice was so disguised as doing the narration, you couldn't understand what they're talking about. So someone else has come along and redone their voice with another narrator so you can understand what they're saying. But that goes into a lot of thing of how they slowed the film down, because when you think they're walking in lunar gravity, they're not just doing it half speed. They're doing it at different speeds according to how far away they are from the camera. This is where it gets very complex. They might do it at a certain frame rate when they're far away, but when they're up close, it's done at a different frame rate. But you don't notice it. It's so subtle, and this guy points all this out. And he also points out that how maybe that the moon set was constructed, and maybe it's a radio-controlled moon buggy or something like that. The other thing about the Russians, well, why didn't they spill the beans if they knew it was fake? Well, they faked their own landings, not landings. The idea of Yuri Gagarin being the first man in space, that's open to question because A, he parachuted out of his capsule, so officially that's not an official landing from space. He parachuted out. He should have actually come down in his capsule. That's one thing. But also is that there's evidence that they may have actually had other attempts with other cosmonauts that didn't make it.
There was two guys, and I think this is going back to the years when they had ham radios and things. They had this fantastic radio equipment they set up themselves in their room, and they were listening and they picked up messages from astronauts, Russian astronauts,
cosmonauts,
in the distress.
Yeah, they're going out to space or something.
There was one particular one. It was a woman cosmonaut, and she says the translation was, "Will I get back? Can I?" And so possibly they had people that were lost.
Yeah.
I think we all have people. I think there are people we've never heard of who were lost.
Yeah. There's evidence of photographs of cosmonauts at a training camp, and they show, I think it's on the Orlis website, they show one picture of all these cosmonauts and that, and then they show another picture, it looks exactly the same, but they've airbrushed out some of these cosmonauts because they're officially not part of the record anymore.
Well, there was an explanation, and I was watching this recently on a program, and they said that some of these cosmonauts disgraced themselves in public. They'd go out drinking and things, and they would obviously that wasn't the way to do it. So they were airbrushed or they were taken out of the photograph because they were basically chucked off the program because they disgraced the
Tipping back the old vodka.
Of course, there was that James Bond movie where they showed the set.
Oh yeah, that's a clue as well.
There's a documentary I've seen whereby the Nixon administration got wind that it wasn't going to work. They weren't going to get there by the end of the decade, and so Kissinger and Cheney were sent over to London to meet up with Kubrick, and they coerced him to use his 2001 film set to do the.
That's a fake film. That's a lot of clever editing. I think I know the film you're talking about, where you got people talking. They don't actually admit to it. They're talking about things that you could be alluded to the movie. Oh yeah, he said that. Oh, well, and we had a laugh and blah blah blah. That's just a lot of clever editing. It's a bit like about 5 or 6 years ago, this alleged confession from Stanley Kubrick came on the internet, and it's this old crusty old guy that looks, who's he? Stanley Kubrick, oh, really? And he's going, well, yeah, I faked the moon landings and blah blah blah. And then about a week or two later, the unedited footage came up where the guy's saying, no, you got to say this. You're pretending to be Stanley Kubrick. And so, again, it's these little things, always pointing to Stanley Kubrick, but it's almost like saying, look at this, but don't look at that,
But there's also lots of clues in the film The Shining, because he was sworn to secrecy, so he put all the little clues.
He might have known about it. There's a possibility he might have known about it. So he was trying to put clues out there because the little boy's wearing an Apollo 11 jumper and stuff.
And the pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it the Columbia
Shuttle?
Shuttle.
Yeah.
Where the astronauts died. And
Yeah.
It was found that the wall's still alive.
That's not true, though. That's not true. Yeah, there's brothers of theirs. There's people that look like them will share the same name, but they all definitely died. I'm pretty sure of that. Interesting enough about the shuttle, when it took off and exploded, the whole cabin section separated, so they didn't die immediately in the explosion. It took about 7 or 8 minutes for it to hit the ocean. They probably died on the impact hitting the ocean because it's like hitting a brick wall, and they found, when they recovered this cabin section, they obviously found some bodies. One body was missing. They found that maybe 2 or 3 months later. But when they recovered the bodies, they found that some of the astronauts, their oxygen supplies had switched on, which is like a bit like when you're in a plane and it loses oxygen, the masks drop down. They had an equivalent kind of emergency thing in their shuttle for that. They said that the shuttle captain, Dick Scobie, I think his name is. Gosh, I'm clever, I know these names. His machine wasn't switched on because he had to turn it on manually. So he probably passed out and didn't have a chance to do it. Whereas the other things were automatic. So it kept them alive for maybe the 7 minutes, which is probably not a great idea because they're falling to their deaths, essentially. They know they're going to be dead in 2 or 3 minutes. I would have rather just blacked out if that was me. And unfortunately, they didn't make it. And another interesting sideline to that is I did see a number of years ago, now whether this is true or not, it probably isn't, but I'll mention it as I'm here, is that I saw this lady doing channeling and she brought back the shuttle captain who talked about the accident and the O-rings and things like that, and she's supposedly channeling him into an audience or something. I watched it with interest, but I didn't think it was true, to be honest. But
why not?
Well, I don't know, it just didn't seem right, he was avoiding questions on the technical side of things and stuff like that. And, if you're a shuttle captain, you should know your stuff, I would have thought. But, some people just like to get the attention. I mean, it could be real. I don't know. I'd need a lot more testing. But based on that initial viewing of that interview, I wasn't convinced. Any final questions? I think
Has NASA, to anyone's knowledge, has NASA ever alleged that on any of their missions to the moon, have they ever tried to supposedly repeat the Cavendish experiment? If the Cavendish experiment is an experiment which is supposed to, it's supposed to prove the universal gravitational constant.
Well, they've done various experiments on the moon to prove gravity, i.e. dropping the feather and the hammer. They've also talked about the when you see the lunar rover go along, it throws out this dust in these plumes they call rooster tails. And they say that proves it's on the moon, because it's only on the moon that you get these rooster tails. But I've seen videos of dune buggies throwing out rooster tails, so that doesn't prove it. There's some other interesting things on that Jet's winter moon hoax thing, where he talks about gravity, and you see a bag, or no, you see a cable swinging. Something gets knocked, and there's a cable hanging down from the ship. Someone throws something. These astronauts, so, you know, considering that they've got to get back home in this craft, they're throwing things willy-nilly, hammers and all sorts of things at this craft, not giving a toss about it, really. And this thing gets thrown at a cable, and you see this cable swinging in the background. And the pendulum effect swing, someone said that's actually the same pendulum effect you would get on Earth, which is interesting. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm only repeating what they're saying. So I thought that was an interesting point.
What if there's an atmosphere on the moon that they're lying about?
Well, there is a very, very thin atmosphere on the moon, but it's not enough to breathe on. Why would they lie about?
It's more substantial, and that's what the lie is.
But why would they lie about an atmosphere on the moon then? If there was an atmosphere on there, why would they lie about it? If they don't want you to know about an atmosphere being on the moon, I'd need to. My question would be, why would they lie about it?
Like say for that, it's a really long interview, but he says some far out things, John Lear. But John Lear is a really well connected person who saw us like ufology.
Yeah, he's the guy that his father, I think, invented the Learjet, didn't he, or something? Yeah.
But there's an interview on YouTube. You watch it in bits. Like it's on for 4 hours. It's called John Lear Reveals All.
Yeah.
He said some. Really
he does say some, yeah.
The cure for AIDS coming from sea cucumbers to the moon having an atmosphere and like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big picture on his wall, and he says, "Oh, you can see the lunar base," and the camera's looking at it, and I'm thinking, I can't see any lunar base. Although I've done a talk with aliens on the moon, I was trying to look for this lunar base on his photo. I couldn't see anything. Now, he did say something interesting. He said Apollo 13, now anyone's seen the film, that's with Tom Hanks, that's where they don't make it to the moon because they have an explosion. That he said, and I think Andrew Johnson's tested it out on his computer program, and other people have done that as well. And I think I first heard this from Andrew Johnson, but it came from John Lear. He said that had they got to the moon in Apollo 13, had there been no explosion, they would have actually landed on the night side of the moon, because they were going to land on this particular area. It was called, I forget what it was called, and someone worked it out on those computer programs where you can rewind the time and sort of see where it is, and on that particular day that it was meant to land, it's actually in the shadows, like just as it's getting dark sort of thing, and that'd be a really dangerous thing to do, landing your Apollo lunar module in the dark. Yeah.
Doesn't the moon always faces the same way? That's the oddity about it. So it's the light side and the dark side. It doesn't change.
Yeah. But obviously, when you're flying around the moon, I see. Yeah, you'll get a dark side and a light side. But I mean, a lunar day actually a lunar day doesn't last 24 hours. It lasts 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Did you know that? So things can hot up there, and it doesn't get dark for at least 2 weeks. But when it goes dark in the sky, it's still there. You just can't see it because it's nighttime sort of thing. Yeah, it's a hard one, but it's got a very slow rotation and stuff.
I thought it didn't move at all.
It appears it's tidally locked to us because we're moving as well. You'd have to watch a video on it to explain it. They explain it with good animation. Dave.
One final one, Neil. I was telling Chris about this. In Nasat in Hebrew means to lie. Nasat.
To lie? To lie. Oh, I thought it stood... Well, the one was when I was younger and the shuttle blew up, was need another 7 astronauts.
There's one final film, I'm sure you've seen it, there's A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to...
Yeah, that's when we covered a few shots in there, yeah. The Bart Sibrel one, yeah. So that's worth watching, 2 of those films. Bart Sibrel, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. That's where they show inside the cabin where they put the thing over the window and try and simulate that they're 135,000 miles out to the moon when they're not really. And Astronauts Gone Wild, where we saw them throwing punches at them.
Is that everybody's question?
One last question.
What's your thoughts, Neil, on the sort of alchemical, esoteric aspects of the Apollo mission? Just as an example, Apollo is the sun. Apollo is a representation, the archetype of the sun. Saturn V, the rocket that took them to the sun, essentially, is the archetype of darkness. In other words, it's an alchemical process. Saturn and the sun is the alchemical union between lead and gold.
Right.
It's quite. I mean, there's so many other aspects. And when I mentioned the falcon feather before,
yeah,
the falcon is the representation of Horus.
Yeah.
Again, Horus being the archetype of the sun.
There might be something to it. I don't really look into that side of things. I just look into the photographs, the videos, the technical aspects of it. There could be some hidden magical thing.
When you analyse
yeah.
The mission numbers and things.
Yeah, there probably is. Like you say, with the Mason connection, there probably is something to that, but I don't really concentrate on that myself. Okay, well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Oh,
I've got a present for you.
a present. I like presents.
Now, Neil's had a long day. He's been on the road since 9 o'clock this morning. So
I've driven longer than a UK trucker.
It's 10 o'clock now. He has. Neil, what got you this?
Look at that. How about that? Thank you so much. Yeah, Man on the Moon. I must tell you a story about it. We had the original newspaper of Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
And we, as kids, well, our family was pretty poor. We never had proper carpets or underlay. And we used to put newspaper under our thing. There's probably a lot of people did that. And that's where our Apollo headlines went, as underlay under our carpet. So it's nice to get another one to look at instead. Thank you so much. I do appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Neil.
Thank you.
For another wonderful talk. And
Brilliant.
We'll have you again tomorrow.
Tomorrow, the sequel, talking
tomorrow.
on more encounters with fairies, ghosts and spirits.
That's 1 o'clock tomorrow at the Walkerville.
Yeah,
Community
I'm doing it
Centre.
in the daytime because I know it'd be scary and it gives you quite a few good hours for it to get off your conscience a bit, so it's not too late at night.
So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure. Pleasure.
We'll
Excellent.
just get a draw from Raffle.
All right.